call to order the meeting of the Royal Oak Local Transit Task Force. This is our second meeting. We are awaiting Dave Woodward, correct? Who is coming from a county commission meeting in Pontiac. He had a 6 o'clock meeting, one item he said, and then he would be here. And a variety of other people who are waiting, or trying to park. Must be the holiday season in downtown Royal Oak. So, just a little background for those of you who weren't here or are watching on television. We were appointed by the City Commission a couple weeks ago, and our task is to discover if Royal Oak can become a city that provides a full range of safe and useful transportation options for its residents, visitors, and employees, so people can get into and around Royal Oak in something other than a single-family occupied car. And so the ballot measure in November of 2016 to pay for improved rapid transit didn't pass, but it did in Royal Oak. 31,402 people said yes, they wanted better transit. So we thought maybe we should try and address that. Could we do that on our own, or should we wait for the Regional Transit Authority to decide their next step? We looked around, and cities all over the country are thinking about mobility as something other than just a car or walking or parking, so we wanted to be on the cutting edge of all that. So the City Commission put together some goals for 2017, and one of them was to create a public transit plan for the city, so that's what we are doing. Now, is local transit right for us? Will it work? Is it safe? We don't know yet because we're still working on it. But we sat down with our Oakland County leaders and our Smart Bus folks to talk transit, as we often do. Smart, as you know, is our transit provider. And several ideas emerged to actually create more local options for us. So we created this draft plan, which we'll talk about later on tonight. It's a very basic draft plan. But we do know that Royal Oak, as a city, has the density, the destinations, the demographics, and the land use patterns to support local transit. We don't expect anything to replace the existing smart routes or to duplicate them, but we do want to connect with them because that's very important. But this really is a level of service that hasn't been considered for a long time in Royal Oak, ever since the Martin lines went out of business in the early 1970s, something I'm reminded of all the time. Why don't we just bring back the Martin lines? We do know that high-quality transit increases our property value, something that we want to do in Royal Oak. We also know from transit systems around the country that communities that have high-quality transit are healthier than communities who don't, because people just simply walk more. And we know that having transit creates a more attractive business environment for employees and employers. So that's what we're trying to do, is to address all those concerns. So I'll make just some introductions from left to right. Dave Woodward, who's not here. Eileen Orlansky. We have, I'm blanking. Brett. Brian Cook, right here. Shar Douglas, City Commissioner. Shar Douglas, me, Marie Donigan, used to be a city commissioner, then a state rep. Now I'm just chair of the Transit Task Force. We have staff, city manager's office, James Krazan. We have Paul Curtis, Becky Moss, and then our lovely clerk, who's taking minutes. So thank you very much for being here. Last week, of course, we had a blizzard. We all came, it was great. We actually had people in the audience, and then presumably we all got home in time in one way or another, snowshoes. And we wished we'd had a better transit system. So we did. So because transit goes no matter what, right? Mm-hmm. Yes. So the agenda for tonight is to have stakeholder reports. You'll remember last week we heard from our school district, and we heard from the who else do we hear from? Oh, from our senior programs, our senior project coordinator. So we're going to hear some more stakeholder reports. We're going to talk about local public transportation options, the draft plan. We're going to talk about what we have learned so far. I'd like to have a discussion about your impressions. We've had 2 meetings. We've learned a lot. What have you heard? What's kind of arising to the top of your mind in terms of priorities, and what are your questions? We need to talk a little bit about our future meeting schedule. What do we want to do next month? When do we want to meet? What do we want to do? Then we need to talk a little bit about public engagement, what we think we want to have, who might want to help work on putting together a public engagement plan. And then Then we'll have public comment when we're all done, and we've all learned a great deal, and then we'll adjourn. So, I'd also like to introduce Rick Ryan, who's in the audience, and Brent Fritz and Denny Torrenson, who are going to be sitting here through these meetings so that they can be another set of ears. They're non-voting members of this task force, but we want them to hear what we hear, so we have people who can come together and make some quick decisions, or some mindful decisions, I should say. So like I said, we had stakeholder reports, and I see our zoo representative just walked in. There he is. So just as a reminder from last week, we did hear from Paige Grimbowski. She's our senior programs coordinator in Royal Oak. She works with our community partnership program, which is our contract with SMART, and we provide service for our seniors. We did find out, of course, it was quite limited because our service doesn't include nights and weekends when senior citizens might actually want to go out and do something. And mostly that is limited by funding. Certainly, we would love to offer better service if we could. We had more than 12,000 trips last year. We don't know exactly how many people took those trips, but that's a lot of trips. It's paid for in partnership with SMART, Municipal Community Credit, state and federal funding, and Beaumont Health. We also have a connector service. It's by appointment. Anybody can use it, but you must live further than 1/3 of a mile from a fixed route transit service. And we heard from Mary Beth Fitzpatrick, who's our superintendent of Royal Oak Schools, a very big partner in this endeavor. Many parents have asked for transportation one way or another. Back in the day when I was growing up here and we had 17 elementary schools, there was one in every neighborhood. Nobody walked more than 3 or 4 blocks to get to school. And now our schools with the limited, we only have 6 elementary schools now. They're not designed for the traffic that they get every morning and every night. So they did have buses after the schools were consolidated, but if only a few students used it. So we have discovered that students all over this country use public transportation. There's a matter of logistics, safety, logistics. How do you even do that? So they are eager to be part of the conversation, and I see Mary Beth is here tonight. Tonight we'll hear from Beaumont Hospital, the Boys and Girls Club, and the Detroit Zoo. The Royal Oak Chamber of Commerce wanted to be here, can't be here tonight, but will be here another night. So each of you will have about 5 minutes to tell us who you are and what your transit needs might be. And so we'll start with, if you don't mind, with the Boys and Girls Club.
Do we need to approve an agenda?
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Getting all wrapped up in my...
Madam Chair, I would move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second.
Do I have a second? You do. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Anything else?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. So there we have it. So we'd like to hear from our stakeholders in this community, and that would be Sally Owens from the Boys and Girls Club. And she brought a student with her.
Right. This is Abby Lovelace.
Please, you can come up to the,
Okay.
yes.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Everybody.
So just tell us who you are.
I'm Sally Owen, Director of Development from the Boys and Girls Clubs of Oakland and Macomb counties, and nice to see everybody and be here. And we feel that we have seen a need for, particularly with our seniors and our families, a need for transportation can be a problem for those two groups for certain. So we're happy to be here this evening.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name's Abby Lovelace. I'm a senior at Royal Oak High School and current staff member at the Boys and Girls Club. Currently, one issue I've seen is a lot of kids are being able to be bused to the Boys and Girls Club from school using our transportation, but some of them have troubles getting home. So a lot of them don't get home until 8 o'clock at night, 7:45, and we close at 7:30, meaning we have to stay there longer to make sure they get home, and they're here longer. They haven't been home since 7 in the morning. That's 12 hours out of the house for them.
So do you have a bus currently, right? You
We
bought a
have
bus?
busings from the high school, the middle school, and I believe 3 elementary schools from the school to the Boys and Girls Club.
Do you have enough seats?
No, we do not. We have a wait list on almost every single bus, especially the middle school. The middle school, we could probably fill up another half of a bus.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Any questions? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to know how
part is from the schools? Is it
To the
to
club.
boys, yeah, to the
Yeah,
club?
we're at Lincoln and Campbell, the south end of the city.
So I went old school with this map over here. Would be great if I had one of the PowerPoint where the things fly in from either
Oh,
side,
yeah.
this old school. So the Boys and Girls Club is the orange one right down there in
Oh,
the
okay.
bottom up corner. It actually says B and G, which is Boys and Girls Club. So yeah, they're down there,
And the schools are probably.
the pink
up there.
ones.
Pink ones, oh, okay.
Yeah, Upton's probably our most.
Yes, it's the upper pink one.
So it's not very expensive, right, for a member of the Boys and Girls Club?
No.
It's like an annual.
$50 a year
$50 a
and
year.
And that
scholarship to a lot
includes
of
free
them.
busing, or if they take the buses or an extra?
Busing is another fee per semester, however, we give scholarship to just about any kid who asks.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure I understand. Kids get there, how do kids get there and how is that different from how they get home?
There's multiple ways that our members come to the club. Often parents drop them off, parents, grandparents. Some are within walking distance. We have a walking school bus from Oakland Elementary, because it's close. And then again, as Abby described, then we have our own bus that makes runs, and then we also have transportation from the school system.
So the transportation from the school system is after school?
Yes,
Okay, but, so those are school buses, yellow school buses?
Except it's blue, I think.
One yellow
One-
school bus
one-
and one Boys and Girls Club
one-
bus.
So they go around and pick up kids at the schools and bring them to the center, and then why are they not available afterwards to take them home?
that's just been in place for years. I think it probably involves staffing for them, and because we close at 7:30.
So
Yeah, so-
the public, or the school bus, the school system school bus,
Brings them to the club.
right?
Yeah.
But then after that, you only have your own bus?
And then the parents will, yeah, and then parents come and pick the kids up in the evenings.
Right, so, but then you load up your bus with however many kids, it holds 30, and do you make then multiple?
We make 2 runs to 2 different schools, yeah.
Well, so in the evening, then do you take the kids to their homes?
No, no, then it's up to the parents to come and.
Get them at the school?
To
Okay,
get them from the club to their homes.
I mean from,
When we close at 7:30.
right?
Yeah, then it's up to the parents to come and pick the kids up.
So there's no bus service
That's correct.
at
There's-
7 o'clock at night?
That's correct.
Oh,
There's no bus service to take them anywhere after. They get to the club by bus, but then it is up to the parents or grandparents or somebody.
Okay, thank you, now I get it.
Sorry. it wasn't-
Yeah, they only pick the kids up from school.
Right.
Right, okay.
I just want to ask about the logistics of picking kids up from school. So is it each school has a dedicated bus, or is there one bus assigned to elementary schools? What are the logistics of that?
You might know, go ahead, you might know this. I'm working part-time now, and Abby is here in the evenings, so she is here when the kids are checking in.
So
If
the
you know
first
that.
the first bus will go and pick up the kids from the middle school, bring them back to us. So that's the white bus. The yellow bus at that time is picking up the high schoolers, but it's also dropping off. That's also the same bus that drops off the students in the special education program. So that bus has the Boys and Girls Club high schoolers and the special education program kids at RoGO High School. It goes and drops off each kid at their house, then brings them to the Boys and Girls Club from the high school. After that, one of the buses goes to Keller, one goes to Upton, and then another one makes another trip to one of the other schools. I know that, not Adams or Northwood, but Oak Ridge, yes. And then we have walking buddies from Oakland, yes.
Why is there no busing from Adams or Northwood? Is that due to demand or funds?
I do not know that answer.
Yeah, I don't know
yeah.
the answer to that either.
Yes.
Is there been any incidents on the bus? Safety, is there bullying, anything like that? Have you guys heard anything or?
Nothing, I mean,
No.
there's little things like kids throwing food, but like little like tiny thing, but nothing ever has actually happened where we've had
And those-
incidents.
Besides the bus driver, there's always one of our Boys and Girls Club staff, people
Oh, okay. Perfect,
on our
Yes.
bus.
okay.
So I just had one more question.
Go ahead.
actually.
Yes.
So is it only two buses that operate in the loop then? There's the one white bus, the yellow bus, and the white bus, middle school back, high school, then the yellow bus is high school, special education back, and depending on availability, one of those two buses goes out to the 3 elementary schools?
So both of the buses go back and pick up elementary schools.
All right, but there are two buses that run in the rotation?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
And I had another question. You said that Adams and Oakland, they walk from there, those two schools?
Just Oakland. Adams and Northwood don't have busing.
Oh, Adams and Northwood.
And Oakland's walking program is actually a parent-run organization, so a group of parents put that together where I believe 2 high school or middle school volunteers will walk the kids from the school to the Boys and Girls Club.
So the kids there, they are getting to the Boys and Girls Club from Adams and Northfield.
Yeah, I mean, some parents do carpooling, so they'll have like, some parents take them Monday, Wednesday, others bring them Tuesday, Thursday, but other than that, we don't have a way to get them there.
Okay.
Do they walk in the rain, snow, anything?
Walking buddies, yes, they do.
So did you say, I forget already, how many students take the bus? Or how many kids take the bus?
On average, I don't have a number, on top of my head, but
But you said
the
there's a
majority
waiting
of our
list.
kids. What was
There
that?
was a waiting list to get used.
Yes, there's waiting lists on the majority of the
2/3.
buses.
I'll guess that.
Do they come just from Royal Oak?
We have kids coming from different school districts, but that's the only busing we have is through Royal Oak schools.
Okay. Any other questions for now? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Paul, good? Thank you for coming.
Good to be here.
It's always good to be able to have someone here from the Detroit Zoo.
Thank you.
Give your name and who you
Paul
are.
Good, I am the Community and Government Relations Director at the zoo. Been there 10 years. Had my fingers in all kinds of little things. Most recently, the RTA. And I'll tell you why. I started at the zoo in 2008. At that time, we were roughly 1.1, not quite, in terms of attendance annual. Last year, we hit 1.7 million. We're probably the fastest growing zoo in the country, although no one keeps those kinds of statistics. That big old parking lot along 10 Mile seemed like we'd never fill it. Now that we have, we're overfilling it. And parking has become a growing challenge. Our attendance is off a little bit this year. We're very weather dependent, and that has driven us back a little. And it's interesting what 100,000 here or there will do. We've had less problems with parking, but we're still pretty much advocates for transit. And I want to make that point that we were very as vocal as we could be, given the makeup of our organization and the effort leading up to the RTA vote. When I found out from Marie there was a local effort going on in Royal Oak, I can't do anything other than be supportive of it. It seems to me that there's a great synergy potential. I mean, there is one, and it's probably something that could be developed even further. The interaction between the millions of people we bring to the zoo and the economic impact in Royal Oak. So that link, whether it's helping people get to the zoo, or maybe from your perspective, leaving the zoo but getting to downtown Royal Oak, seems like something that has to be explored to its max, because helping that transition is key to it. Part of our problem now is the whole experience at the zoo begins with the parking experience, and we're trying to make that as painless as possible. So in the RTA argument, I often said 10% of our attendance, if you take that out of cars and put it into any mode, I don't care, transit of some sort, is going to help us immensely in terms of managing our crowd and making that experience a high-value one, which is why we've been able to grow the attendance so much. So as much as I can do, I'm an advocate, and you're a neighbor. We want to make it work.
So, Royal Oak, just so people know, the front part of the zoo is in Royal Oak?
Roughly the front,
Are the penguins in Royal Oak?
yes.
Yes.
It's
An
about,
important
it's about
distinction.
a third. It's not quite a third. It's, maybe 25%. The rest is in Huntington Woods.
And so I've, just from what I've gathered, or maybe conversations with you and then like rumors, y'all are working on a new entrance, or hope to build a new entrance, pedestrian entrance, or kind of something you
We
talk
work
about in
kind
your
of
master
on
plan?
all kinds of things all the time, so
Right,
it's really contingent on available funds and opportunities, so.
and a parking deck? Also talking about that? Probably not.
Parking decks are tough because they're so expensive.
Tell us
and
about it.
I know, you know it better than I. And we don't use it all the time.
It's true, it would
Therein
sit there.
lies the problem. And to put it in a viable spot probably means we're taking existing parking out of circulation to build it. So that further exacerbates the problem. And when you're done, you're spending 25 to 30,000, or 25 or whatever it is, 15, 20, 25 per parking spot. And that's a big out-of-pocket cost. No one's going to help us do fundraising for park. They'll do it for penguins.
Yeah, right.
Not for parking. So,
So then, getting into the zoo, I've driven by there on good zoo days, nice Saturdays, where the cars are backed up to, on the expressway and every place else. I assume that's a continuing problem, especially in the warm days of the summer.
yeah, we've addressed it as, in the sense, we created a new entrance west of Woodward, punched a hole in the wall. We had MDOT change the sign on eastbound 696. Historically, it has said Detroit Zoo at Woodward. That sign came down. The one at Coolidge now says Detroit Zoo. So we're running people, ideally running, and about 40% of our attendants make trips eastbound on 696. Little factoid. So we're running people up on, hopefully they're following the signs, coming off on Coolidge, coming around, doing a Michigan left, and instead of, that's just beyond the administrative building. Now you can go take that left and continue across the street into 3 gates going into the zoo, which is the extreme west end of the 10-mile parking lot. What that has done by itself is taking out of play the churning that goes on at the gate coming just by on the service drive just beyond the parking structure. People come in there, they can go right into the parking structure, they can continue on into the tower lot, or now they can go to the permeable parking lot that's just east of the Polk Penguin Conservation Center. Or they can go left on into the 10-mile lot. So we had lots of people milling around in there. Now the logical thing to do is to come in and fill the lot from the west. They'll go all the way to the east, but they fill it coming back out to the west. They come into the 10-mile lot. When they leave, we now have 3 gates open to get them back onto the service drive and out. So that's helped a lot, taking some of that pressure off of Woodward and 696.
So, it's probably a sore spot, but you're gonna be losing the parking spaces that you leased from the city in our 696 and Woodward parking?
Undoubtedly, yes.
Yes.
We know that.
How many cars was that?
We could put 500 cars there.
Okay.
And we used that one as needed and paid the city per diem and use of it. It's been very convenient. For a long time, we thought it was ours. It's not. Well, you didn't want a parking lot there either. That I understand.
Yeah. Go ahead, Becky.
So, I have a 3-year-old, and I've never had a problem parking at the zoo, but when we go, there's the stroller or like the wagon and all that kind of stuff. So I've never had to like rent them or anything. Do you guys have all that? Because that's the only thing I could see with like young families is that they have all this stuff with them
Yeah, we
in
can,
their cars. So
we can rent some of that stuff, but it's, most people bring their own.
So I guess the only buses that are there now are like for field trips and older kids, correct? There's no, or do you see younger kids, like car seat kids coming?
We see seniors, we see kids, we see, we see the,
Coming on buses in any way? Or
yeah.
really?
Yeah. Right now, with our wild winter lights, we get lots of buses, small ones coming in, but their destination, we're a destination for a lot of the hotels are looking, people who stay 2 or 3 days looking for something to do. They've found us. And they'll bring, buses that are holding 25, 35 people at a time. So it runs the gamut. And we can handle buses. I mean, we've got a lot
Right.
of history of
I
that
was
with
just
just the
thinking,
field trips.
with the younger kids, I wasn't expecting them to be on the buses, with strollers and car seats and all that kind of stuff, but.
Well, maybe not, but if those who can, or if it's more convenient for them to take a bus, like I said, 10%, one way or another, is a big deal for our
Absolutely.
capacity.
There's gonna be a market for collapsible, wagons, I think.
Yeah, so it turns out people all over the world take buses with kids in tow, and their paraphernalia that goes with them. I have a question about how you would see the relationship between the zoo and the city being a win-win. I'm thinking the city has parking decks. If it had public transportation that could drop them off at the zoo and then bring them back to the parking decks, it may cause some people to stop off at some local establishments for
So last
lunch or-
summer, we experimented with, we rented shuttles. We couldn't park them on site at the zoo. We had 2 arrangements we negotiated, one with OCC and one with the city of Royal Oak. We tried both, but we ended up using the lots closest to the zoo. The lot, I'm sorry, I can't remember the geography or the name of the streets, but the one Royal Oak structure closest to the zoo
Lafayette.
is about 1/3 of a mile from the front gate. If you park at the far western end of the 10-mile lot, you're about 1/3 of a mile from the gate. So we did that on busy days last summer. And it took us, and we're trying to keep our costs down. We're not taking revenue when we put people in a situation like that for parking. And shuttles are expensive. And the day of the morning of, you look outside, is it gonna rain or not? We're so susceptible to the weather. And if it was a go situation, it was easy for us and the city to accommodate us, but we never knew how long that was going to be a rush, how often we had to run these buses or the shuttles. And it's a whole new operational piece for us. So by the end of the summer, we kind of had it down, but it took some trial and error. And like I said, it's really tough to have paying customers go through this trial and error process. But we looked at every option we could possibly think of. Still on the table is to work with the Sing Development Company to see if we could work out some arrangement for the parking that will go into that new development. They need the parking during the weekday. We don't. Presumably, a lot of it will be empty on the weekend. That's where we need the parking. So that may be another option yet that we're exploring. But we got, I guess, surprised by that's one of the unintended consequences of this success that we've had with attendance. And it's been a learning curve for us on it. So we've been resourceful and we've used your facilities. So we get it. What I can't do is have that family leave the zoo and end up in Royal Oak having dinner. I can't necessarily make that happen. But maybe that's another piece to the puzzle.
What are the zoo hours?
Usually it's 9 to 5 during the high season. Right now it's 10 to 4.
Brian?
Would you, with your experiment with the shuttles, would you do that again? I mean, were patrons
It's
receptive
better
to
than
that?
not parking people, yeah.
Yeah.
I think we learn how to do it a little better towards the end of the year, and I think we'd do it again if that option was available to us with the city.
And was there any consideration, like members, for example, the parking at the zoo is included, but in the structures it would be, it's on top. So is there any consideration made for that?
No, we've flirted with it, but it's, you know, there's ways, we can even do priority parking in different areas, but we don't want to get into that if we can avoid it.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes very complicated. We've had some consultants give us ideas, and we're still thinking on them, but it's tough. Some of those things are tough decisions.
One more question I did have. Out of the 1.7 million or so that visited this year, what percentage are Royal Oak residents?
Oh, I couldn't tell you.
No?
I haven't.
Okay.
I could if given a little time.
I was just curious how many are local and may
I can
use. the
tell you
system
that
or
roughly 3/4 of them come from Wayne, Oakland, Macomb County,
Okay.
and the highest percentage of those three are Oakland County residents. There's a strong disproportion of concentration of members along Woodward. It's kind of like a little amoeba running from about 7 Mile up to maybe Birmingham, a little bit more. It's just the proximity and, you know, a family environment, so.
And probably maybe the last thing, but you are working with SMART to
Yes.
get a bus stop
Yes.
in front of the zoo or somewhere around the zoo.
I understand it is supposed to be in operation.
We'll ask them when we talk to
At the
them,
end
but,
of at the beginning
well,
of the year.
because of the new express service on Woodward,
Yes.
makes it easier to take a bus to get to the zoo. It'd be really great if in Royal Oak, you could actually get a connection to Woodward.
Well, yeah, it's all about
Yeah,
the connectivity of it
connections.
all, obviously, yeah.
When I go to the zoo to walk, it turns out you can work from the zoo if you have a cell phone. And it's really a nice thing to do, but I park in somebody's neighborhood and walk. That's what I do just for some added exercise, so,
I've been told by neighbors that that.
yeah. But I'll
Oh,
just,
you do.
before, just to wrap it up, I will say that during the transit campaign and all the years that I worked on the regional transit plan, the zoo was very accommodating. We held many meetings at the zoo with our regional partners and our mayors and all that to discuss transit in some way, so I miss those meetings.
We do what we can.
Well, thank you very much, unless anybody has another question. Thank you, Paul, for being here.
You're welcome.
And then I think I saw Maureen Elliott come in here from Beaumont. She's behind Paul. You can't, I didn't know this, but you can't see that first row of the seats. Hey, Maureen, how are you?
I just got back from vacation, so excuse how I look. Plus, I had to park, I'm late, I had to park way over there. And I live at 13 in Rochester, and I thought, wouldn't it be neat to be able to hop on something and come down
It's a
here?
great segue.
I thought so. So I'm Maureen Elliott, I'm the Regional Community Affairs Manager at Beaumont Royal Oak. And I'm thrilled to be here. If anybody has ever parked over at Beaumont, had a difficult time parking over at Beaumont, we have about 1,100 beds, about 10,000 employees. And I don't have the figure, but it's between 400 and 600 people, I think, live in Royal Oak that work at Beaumont. Beaumont Royal Oak, the hospital, and also the health center over on Coolidge. I did want to mention that we do help provide some funding every year to the city of Royal Oak for transportation, and that's for the senior and the disabled folks that use the senior centers. So, and we've been doing that forever, long time.
Now, yeah, we heard that last week. We had a presentation by our senior transit, by our senior coordinator, yes. Your staff works round the clock,
That's
clearly.
right. And we have no visitor hours anymore, so you can visit a patient anytime you want to.
And I would assume dialysis happens all day long, my recollection.
Right, yes,
And you can now get medical tests in the middle of the night.
yes. If you need a mammogram, you can get one at 11 11 PM. That's
But
right.
When there weren't that many MRI machines, they would schedule them for 11 o'clock at night. Yeah.
Yes, that's for sure.
So your shifts, I think your shifts start at like 7 in the morning, something like that.
Yeah, 3 shifts a day. That's right.
Do you know of any statistics, you probably don't, but maybe you do,
But I
of
can
like
find out if
missed
I don't.
appointments or, anything like that, like?
Well, again, our parking, we have 2 parking structures and a couple of flat lots. So those are usually pretty well full. So I know people have to plan to get over there. And the Beaumont Health Center, I don't know if you're familiar with that, on Coolidge across from Myers, that also is usually full.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so many patients from Royal Oak that could use this kind of service for sure.
Do you know how many of your employees take public transportation
No,
currently?
we've looked into
You
that.
have.
We've not been able to determine it because we can't really stand out there and count.
Right.
And I suppose we could do a survey if that would be helpful. We might be able to do something like that.
And I know you did work with SMART to address your transit needs with your new retail facility.
Yes, at 13 in Woodward, our new Woodward corner.
It'll be around the corner.
I don't know if we've determined exactly where it's going to be yet.
Well, we'll ask them. Probably not. Our
Maybe
folks
you.
from SMART.
Oh, okay, all right. I thought, okay, that's
Does
good.
anybody have any questions for Maureen? Giant hospital, people go. Not tonight, I guess. I'm
Okay.
sure when we have a work session, we may
Sure.
want to call you back or.
Yes, if you want some more definitive information, I'm sure I can get it for you.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Maureen.
I don't think I have anybody else here from the Chamber or the DDA. So, we'll move on to SMART. So if you can pull up on that, yeah, okay. So now we're gonna look at local public transit options, and like I said, we put together a draft map, I think it's gonna come up on the screen. And then there's my old school map over here. We've been calling the system ROGO, we meaning some of us who have been meeting with SMART over the last couple months. I'm just gonna explain it really quickly, and then they're gonna go into it in more detail. None of this is a done deal. It's a draft plan, something to talk about. It's not a wacky idea. I mean, it's been vetted and looked at by some transit professionals, but of course, the more we talk about public transportation, the more we learn and the more the plan might change. But we did learn last week in Transit 101 that the important principles that make transit useful are frequency, how often the buses come. I read somewhere that frequency equals freedom. Span, what time of the day does it start and what time does it end and how many days a week does it operate? And coverage, how much ground does it cover? Where the heck does the transit system go? So as this plan is drawn, it shows 8 routes: Crooks, Campbell, Lincoln, Normandy, Rochester, 13 Mile, Main, and 4th Street, with various route deviations. It also, the original idea was 30-minute frequencies or headways. They'll talk about the difference between 15 and 30-minute. Span, the idea was to make it useful, meaning it would go weekdays and weekends. We obviously have peak times, Saturday nights, Friday nights, even holiday nights, apparently. Farmers market shopping, coverage, obviously this plan covers most of Royal Oak in one way or another. And the idea of it is to connect to our current SMART system, to make connections to Woodward and the express bus service that we will see. So I'm going to let Dustin, we have with us Dustin Hagforce. He's the transportation planner for SMART, and Lucas Reigstad. He's a mobility management coordinator, and they're going to go into a few more details about this plan and some other things. They're also going to talk about our partnership with SMART and how we might actually pull something like this off, working with our community partnership program, and they'll also go a little bit about flexible transportation options. We heard last week about some of that that are used around the country. to get places that this is what this fixed route transit won't go. And I did put some things at your place, and they're on the website. The map of the smart bus service, what we currently get in Royal Oak. There was an article about OmniLink, which is, I saw it today, it's a really great system, or it seems like it. All these systems sounds great on paper, until you actually find out if they're really great or not, but it's in Prince William County, Virginia, and it's a demand response system combined with a fixed route system. Sounds great on paper. And then I should say that Judy Davids, our community engagement coordinator, yes, thank you. She set up a Royal Oak web page for us, a transit task force web page. That you can find it from romy.gov, what's happening, improving Royal Oak, transit task force, and all of these articles that I think are useful are there. So, anyway, Dustin, thank you. We've talked on the phone several times. I'm very happy to have you here.
Yes, thank you for having me here.
And feel free to you can see your presentation up there on the screen, I hope?
Yep, there it is right there.
Okay, there you
Well,
go.
again, thank you guys for having us this evening. We are here on behalf of our Deputy General Manager, Robert Kramer, so we can kind of explain a little bit more for you guys. I do want to give you a quick disclaimer. I am a transportation planner, so routing and functionality of the service, I can answer a ton of questions for you. Financial-wise, I can't get too deep in that, so just kind of give you a disclaimer on what we present here. But looking at your ROGO concept, we did kind of give a quick kind of overview of what you would expect as the minimum expectations for this concept. So since we are trying to fill in the gaps of what service you don't have for seniors, the assumption is that your weekday service would be 6 hours, usually just in the evening because you have the daytime service already. It would be 12 hours of service on Saturday and 10 hours on Sunday. With 30-minute headways, so 30 minutes between each bus along each line. So with that in mind, that would take you about 22,000 hours of service, which at about $100 per hour, that would be about $2.2 million that you guys would need to be expected just for the operating the service. And then a minimum of about 10 vehicles with a couple of spares just in case they break down or get in an accident or whatnot. And then if you want to double that frequency and have only 15-minute headways, then you would need 20 buses, 4.4 million, whatnot. But if you guys wanted to do more of an enhanced service, that would be by having weekday service be all 12 hours. So you would have your standard ADA service, standard connector service, and then this service on top of it. So you have buffed up service during the weekdays. All of that would be approximately 33,000 hours of service, which would be about 3.3 million. If you have the 20 buses, it would be 6.6 million. So looking at all your capital costs of this ROGO concept, depending on what bus you use, obviously that's going to change the cost of the service. So if you do the small like connector size buses, those range for about $80,000, give or take, depending on what amenities and features you have built on them. Obviously, the bigger the bus, the more expensive it can get. Our standard smart buses typically are about $400,000 to $600,000 a piece. Those are the fixed routes that travel on Woodward. So if you're looking at buses that size, your cost is going to go up dramatically. And then looking at the amenities, if you wanted to do shelters at each stop, that's about $20,000 with the shelter costs, the amenities of like the trash can, the bench, as well as installation and concrete. And then we do have tracking systems on all of our buses, cameras on all of our buses for security features, and then customer service and whatnot. All that cost varies depending on who the distributor is, and that would be something you would want to put out a bid for. But the cost will just be added into the overall, so you just need to be aware of that. But looking at your concept, there are a few improvements that we have looked at that could be something to consider. And like Marie said, 15-minute headways would be a nice feature because it just reduces the overall trip for the individual. So if someone wanted to come, take the bus and come downtown Royal Oak for dinner or whatnot. If you have 15-minute headways, it's usually not a problem. They may slightly miss the bus, but they don't mind waiting an extra 10 to 15 minutes for the next bus. If you have a half an hour headway, then you start playing with if someone's meal finishes up and then they are walking out the door as the bus goes by. Now they have an extra half an hour that they have to wait, and now that may deter them from taking in the future because of that time that was lost because of the longer headways. And you may want to also look at the modifying of the routing a little bit. I know one thing that we'll bring up when we look at our existing smart service is I noticed that the kind of the mock-up doesn't travel along 12 Mile at all. We do have a 12-mile bus, but unfortunately it actually deters. It goes 12 Mile through Berkeley, and then actually heads south on Coolidge to 11 Mile, and then travels across to, I believe it is Main Street, and then up, then the 12 Mile back. So it kind of it skips where the that giant church is, the shrine. I can't remember the full name of it, but so it kind of misses that opportunity. Where if you have a lot of Royal Oak residents who do attend church there, I know they probably have parking issues as well because it's such a big institution. So that may be something to look into connecting. And then we also thought, while this is a city service, you may have residents who want to go to particular destinations that you may consider routing where if it does go outside of city boundaries, maybe it becomes an express at that point. So once it leaves Royal Oak's boundary and it's maybe going to downtown Ferndale, it doesn't stop anywhere until you get in downtown Ferndale and you drop off your residents, and then they can pick it back up and go straight back to the city. That way it's kind of adding to the ability to almost have a destination, and while it may not necessarily be benefiting the businesses in Royal Oak, it could also benefit because you could also have residents who are coming from outside the city and taking it straight to downtown Royal Oak for shopping and dining and whatnot. And also possible modifications. Again, you can add all the bells and whistles you want. You guys can add enhanced shelters with arrival time screens in it. You guys can add customer service buttons to ask, for help or ask for directions when you're at the shelters. There's so many different amenities that you can go into, and like Marie's finding out, transportation is changing constantly, so there's always something new and exciting that you can do. But obviously with all the enhancements comes added costs, so just something to be aware of. So for managing the ROGO concept, one of the ways you can do it is it could be operated as part of the current CPP program that Royal Oak has. It can also become its own CPP program depending on how large this becomes and if it's better to keep those two separated or whatnot. And if it does become a CPP program, it does get access to grant dollars for the vehicles. And then we do also offer assistance with planning, maintenance, operating, whatnot. And it's reduced direct costs, and I'll go into some of the costs that may be reduced in a future slide. So it's kind of a more of a partnership with Smart if you do CPP, but obviously it depends on kind of what you're trying to get from it, where it may be more beneficial to do it individually. It just comes down with the more planning that you're doing, the more discussion that you do, kind of will determine what route you go in that direction. But with the management possibilities, if you do choose a CPP version, one of the benefits of that is the buses can be fueled and maintained at our Troy Transit Center, which is on Maple. And what that gets you is the fuel will be at the cost that we get fuel, so you won't be paying the same cost that you would take it to a gas station around here. The maintenance would be parts at cost. And then also storage opportunities and loaner opportunities. We may have some additional buses available where if one of your buses breaks down and you just don't have that extra bus to fill in the gap, we may be able to loan a vehicle until that bus gets back up and running. But ultimately, though, for the city, what your responsibilities would be is you'd have to do the daily operation of the service. You'd have to be the ones hiring your own drivers. Our drivers are unionized, and the two can't really coexist. So that would be in charge of hiring the drivers and human resources and payroll, but it would probably fall underneath just a city office here. And then also reporting and customer service and complaints and whatnot would be on the city. And again, it would just kind of roll. It would probably be a new department here or go into an existing department that's available here at the city. But some other potential collaborations and enhancements as well that you can consider with this ROGO is developing a mobile app. We do have a smart tracking app that riders can log on to. They can download on the phone, then they can pick whatever bus route they're taking, as well as pick whatever stop they're taking, and it'll actually tell you what buses are within a half an hour of that route. So that way you can kind of plan if it's a cold day and you know it's only going to take you 10 minutes to get to the bus stop. You can look at the app and say, okay, the bus is 15 minutes away, so I can stay inside warm for another 5 minutes before I have to trek out there. So looking at our existing smart service in Royal Oak, we do have a few lines. So again, I already talked about that 12-mile line, which it does travel through Royal Oak, but not along 12-mile the whole way. It does go through 11-mile to access a Royal Oak Transit Center. We have multiple Woodward routes. We have the 450, which goes up to Pontiac. We have the 460, which ends at Somerset and Troy. We have our 445, which is a limited service during weekday rush hour hours that travels from West Bloomfield to downtown. We have our new service coming, which will be limited stops, and it will be traveling to and from the city all day, every day, as well as on the weekends and pretty late into the evenings as well. It's not full 24 hours, but it's pretty late. And that new service will run, again, up to Pontiac and deep into Troy to the Troy Civic Center. We will be having a stop at the zoo that has been discussed. There will be a stop for Royal Oak. There will be a stop at the zoo. Right in front of that LA Fitness will be kind of where the stop is for there, going northbound. There will be a stop at 11 Mile, a stop at 12, a stop at 13, and a stop at 14. So Royal Oak will have quite a few stops to access that. And then aside from that, we again also have our 13-mile bus and 14-mile bus. So we do have the mile roads primarily covered. And then aside from the fixed routes, we have our connector buses, our ADA paratransit, and our CPP program as discussed before. But one of the questions that Marie brought up to us was, this idea of flexible transit. Are we able to have a fixed route but have the buses deter a little bit depending on need, depending on demand? So to talk about flexible transit, I do want to bring up Lucas here. He's more of an expert in it than I am, and he's going to talk to you a little bit further about that.
Thanks, Dustin. Hi, everybody. Lucas Brigstad, Mobility Management Coordinator at SMART. I wouldn't call myself an expert in flexible transit. I've read a report and kind of seen some examples of it being used across the country, so that's the extent of my knowledge. I'll try to share that with you today. So what is flexible transit? Well, it combines some traditional aspects of public transit with more on-demand options. You have a reduced emphasis on some of the more rigid elements of fixed route transit, so less of an emphasis on stops, on schedules, on sort of an actual route that's followed every time. And increasingly, you're seeing flexible transit as a way to bring some of these new mobility options to public transportation. So new apps, new services from private providers like Uber and Lyft coming into this world, helping to make flexible transit a little bit more viable and cutting edge. Next slide, please.
I think that is it.
That's it?
You're on your own.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay. Thanks. So, why would you look at flexible transit instead of fixed route transit options? It can be a little bit more effective in lower density environments where maybe transit ridership isn't showing as high demand, or you haven't quite proven out yet that the demand is very high. So in that case, it could actually be a little bit more cost effective than running 3 or 4 buses at the same time, all the time, that might not be very full all the time. It can provide sort of this first mile, last mile connection to more frequent fixed route transit services. So let's say that you live 2 miles from Woodward, right? And there's a lot of frequent smart bus routes that are around Woodward, but you don't feel like walking, 40, 45 minutes to get to the bus stop. If you can pick up a flex bus that kind of circulates in your neighborhood, or reserve a trip on some sort of a demand response app that you have that comes to pick you up at your house, takes you to a bus stop, and it's synchronized with the bus so that you don't have to wait very long at the bus stop. Then you take the bus for the rest of your trip. That's one sort of effective way to increase the usage of the fixed route services that are out there, get more people to use it who might not otherwise use it because they're too far away. And also, if you're looking at sort of a smaller city context, it provides better connections to some community amenities than regional services might. So now we're going to get into some maybe technical stuff. There are kind of two general types of flexible transit services. The first one here is zone focused. So if you look at these three examples here, you've got the one on top is called point deviation. So you've got this gray rectangle, which kind of represents the zone in which your flexible vehicle operates. You've got two squares on either side. So those squares represent the starting point and the ending point. So a vehicle starts on the left at a certain scheduled time. There's a little bit of scheduling in some of these. And then it kind of circulates in that zone. It might hit those two other dots that are in the zone at a certain time, so that you can at least depend on the vehicle being at each of those dots at a certain scheduled point. But between those stops, the vehicle can go just about anywhere within that zone to pick people up, drop them off. So it's kind of a hybrid of a scheduled service and a more flexible service. The next example down there is what's called a demand responsive connector. So you've still got that gray zone, and then on the left, you can see there's sort of a transit route, right? It's a line with a bunch of circles on it. So at one point, that is a scheduled point where the vehicle always starts and returns to at the end of its run. And it syncs up with the schedule of that transit route so that you can make a really convenient transfer. And then it circulates and picks people up and drops people off within that zone. For a larger zone, you can set it up so that you've got a few designated pick-up and drop-off locations where you can go stand at one of these points, reserve a trip, and it'll come and pick you up and drop you off there. That's a little bit easier to do in larger zones than just having people picked up all over the place. It keeps things a little bit more reliable. And then the last one is kind of a really simple zone route where the bus or vehicle begins and ends at one point on the edge of the zone, and you can always count on it coming back to that spot at a certain time. So you can pick it up there or get off there, and then it will pick up and drop off within that zone between those start times and end times. Next slide, please. Okay. So then there are also route-focused options. These are a little bit closer to a traditional bus route, but with some variation. So you've got on the top, just a regular bus route. The black dots indicate regular stops, scheduled stops. You stand there, you wait for the bus to come, it picks you up. But then you've got these other two white dots just off to the side of these routes. And so say you've got, one of those dots represents a hospital that's maybe 3 or 4 blocks away from the bus route. Now, probably a hospital, the bus route would go there, but, say it's something that is close enough to the route that if you talk to the driver and say, hey, I want you to drop me off that white dot, the bus will pull off the route, drop you off there, get back on the route, and finish the rest of its run. Or if you want to schedule a pickup at one of those white dots ahead of time, it'll come off, pick you up, and then get back on the route. And then the two options below that are just kind of a variation of that where for certain parts of a bus route, maybe the bus goes off and operates in a zone kind of circulator pattern, or even on the bottom, the route deviation service where you've got fixed stops, but the bus will also pick up and drop off anywhere within, say, a half-mile radius of the bus route. So there are a lot of different ways to do flexible transit services. These are the basic concepts. Now I'm going to get into some real-world examples, and hopefully that'll help you understand a little more. So AC Transit is a public transit authority in the Bay Area of California, and they have services in some of their lower density suburban areas that connect outlying communities to rapid transit stations. So you can see there the blue line on the bottom with the red circle. That's sort of a high-capacity rail transit line, the BART system, and there's a station there in the red circle. So for this service, if you get on or, set up a pickup or a drop-off at any of those red dots, sort of the set pickup or drop-off stops in this zone, doesn't serve them in any kind of particular order, depends on who reserves trips where. You can get picked up at any of those red dots and it'll bring you right to the train station. And if you're getting off the train, you can do the reverse. You can get off the train and then it will take you to any of those red dots that you request in the neighborhood. So that's sort of a first mile, last mile example. I've got another, they've got another route in the next slide. This one is a little bit harder to see, but you can kind of see, you can trace on the right-hand side of the map, you've got some of the red dots that kind of go up along a street, and it almost looks like a regular bus route, right? Well, there used to be a bus route here, a regular fixed route scheduled bus, but I think they found that people weren't riding it as much to justify the cost of operating a full bus route, so they scaled it back to this demand response service instead. But it still provides a critical connection to the rapid transit stop up there in the right-hand top right corner. So that's an example of kind of, you know, you don't necessarily have to have a fixed bus route if you can use a flexible transit option instead. Here's an example a little bit closer to home. SMART operates the Grosse Flex shuttle in Macomb County. So if you look at this map, the bottom of it is kind of 8 Mile, and then the top of this green zone here is M59 or Hall Road. So anywhere within that green zone, which is about 20 to 25 square miles maybe, you can call SMART and reserve a pickup or a drop-off at some location within that zone. But you've also got 3 black dots, one on the bottom, one kind of in the middle, and then one at the top, where, as you can see, there are scheduled times that the vehicle arrives at those stops. So you can sometimes, if you go to one of those places, you can count on a vehicle being there at a particular time. But then everywhere else, you can reserve a trip, and the bus will come pick you up. So I think I've got some more examples of some SMART services. We operate some mall shuttle services around the Oakland Mall and the Somerset Mall. So anywhere within those colored zones there, same thing, kind of thing. You can call SMART, they'll come pick you up within that zone and drop you off somewhere else within that zone. And the nice thing about these zones is that at both of the malls, you've got pretty frequent transit service and a bunch of different SMART transit routes that come together at those locations. So you can use these zone services to get to the bus stops. Then that'll take you wherever else you want to go from there. Next slide, please. Okay, so now we're going to get into some of the, I guess, newer transportation providers that are out there and some partnerships that have emerged because of these new innovations. You guys probably know what Uber and Lyft are. I'm sure it's not the first time you've heard of that. Uber and Lyft are known as transportation network companies, or TNCs. Basically, the whole theme of their service is you can download an app on your phone, you can reserve a trip, a car will come pick you up within minutes. You can pay for that trip on your phone too, you don't have to have cash with you. The fares kind of vary depending on the time of day, how far you're going. Some of them even now have carpooling options for commuting, which is kind of different. And you can get both of these services in Metro Detroit. Next slide. Okay. So this is an interesting partnership that's emerged between Lyft, another app provider from a Detroit-based startup called Split, and also Beaumont Health, I believe, which has sort of a transportation arm for its patients, where Lyft provides the drivers and the vehicles and the rides for patients who want to get to the hospital and who don't necessarily need special assistance like wheelchair assistance, that kind of thing. Split has this back-end system where you've got an app on your smartphone where you can reserve a trip, but you can also call in on the phone, you can do text message reservations online, so you don't just have to have a smartphone, which is kind of different about this option. And you can reserve a trip, you'll get picked up, you know, with just a few hours' notice, you can get picked up at your home, dropped off at a Beaumont facility for your appointment, and then you don't have to wait that long after your appointment is done to get a ride home. That's something that can be a problem with a lot of non-emergency medical transportation services as they exist today. Because the demand is so high and capacity is so limited, you often have to reserve a trip several days in advance. And then sometimes, once your appointment is done, depending on how busy it is, you can wait several hours at the doctor's office or the hospital to get a trip back home. So if you use Lyft a little bit through this new partnership, you can kind of get, it's more convenient for people. University of Michigan has a pilot program called RITMO. That stands for something. I don't remember what it stands for.
But M is Michigan, but,
I was thinking mobility.
oh, there you go.
But maybe it's both, who knows?
We'll see.
So this is a pilot program that the engineering school, I think, has put together. They developed this dynamic algorithm for allocating shuttle vehicles according to demand. And they sort of put it into an app, and I think they're letting people test it out now. If you're familiar with the U of M campus, there's this central campus, which is right in downtown Ann Arbor. It's the older campus. And then there's the north campus, which is in like the northeastern part of the city. It's this sprawling, campus where you've got, all the engineering buildings, you've got research and development facilities, you've got student housing all over the place. And that generates a lot of demand for trips between North Campus and Central Campus, but because it's so spread out, you've got to take some vehicles to serve the more far-flung parts of the campus, which means you've got fewer vehicles to serve the busiest parts of the campus. You've got tons of kids on these buses. They're crowded. They're slowing down because people are getting on and off. This option allows for sort of a demand response shuttle to serve the outlying parts of the campus that are farther away but have less demand for trips. So you can reserve a trip on this app. It'll come pick you up. It'll bring you to the central part of the campus where you can get on a bus that'll take you the rest of the way there. And throughout the day, this algorithm in the app tracks usage and sort of deploys shuttles to different parts of the campus depending on how demand is going at the time. So it's an intelligent way to allocate vehicles. And it also means you can take more of your larger buses, pull them off these routes that serve the far out areas, provide more capacity where it's needed at the busiest parts between campuses. Here's just sort of a roundup of a few other ones I think you've probably heard of or will soon hear about a lot of these. RideHop is a sort of on-demand trip app. It's another local startup. It's used in the downtown parking shuttles that Quicken Loans and other companies use downtown to get their employees from work to outlying parking facilities. The U of M Detroit Connector, a bus that connects Detroit to Ann Arbor, and also the K-Line, which is in Grosse Pointe. Scoot, that's an airport sort of app-based trip service. And then Chariot, which is a newer partnership, a microtransit provider, focused mostly on working with particular employers to get their employees to work. They don't really exist in this region yet. They're mostly active, I think, in the Bay Area and Boston and a couple of other larger cities. But they are with Ford Smart Mobility, which is right here. So it's an opportunity for perhaps a partnership in the future. Got some examples of shuttle bus paint schemes. I think.
Yeah, we want to leave you with pictures because that was a lot of information. So pictures are a little easier to understand. So this is kind of just an idea that if you decide to go with the smaller buses, you're not stuck with however they look. I mean, you can always dress them up. You can make, you can do art. You can have a design, whatnot. So there's just different options you can do with whatever bus you choose. But I think that pretty much wraps up, though, what we wanted to get across to you guys. And I'm sure you won't have a ton of questions. And hopefully we'll have a ton of good answers for you.
There you go. My favorite.
That just says Royal Oak.
Right. Commissioner Donigan.
The split service, do people pay market rates for that?
That I couldn't find any information on. It's still sort of a pilot program. I'm still digging for more information about it. It's been going on for about a year, or it started about a year ago at least, so I don't know.
Just keep that as a question and we'll find out. Yeah. Other question?
I have a question. Seems like all the transportation routes that you have are like single destination routes where you go to the zoo, pick up, go to the zoo, then you come back. And so I had in mind, and I don't know if anybody else on this task force had thought about it, but I thought, like in the city of Royal Oak, to bring people into the city, we would need something like an on and off kind of transportation within the city. So in other words, a person might come into at noon and not want, and go to several places within the city and not able to walk. They may have children, they may be a senior citizen, where the person could purchase a a use of the city, just city proper transit system, like maybe running on Main Street in Lafayette and then on the 4th Street, 6th Street, and just within the city proper. And has that ever been thought of?
I think that this whole idea is still very conceptual. I think kind of the purpose of what we talked about and whatnot was just kind of give you more to think about, and that there's still a lot of components to really kind of, chew on and really figure out if it's something that you guys want to tackle. So the routing as it is, I think it's purely just here's ideas, and as the ideas come to fruition more, there'll be some finessing, there'll be some gaps that will probably be found that we may want to finesse or whatnot.
So would you consider this service, like in your own head, a new service or sort of expanded smart service? In terms of planning a transit system?
I guess it depends on how ultimately the service comes out. If the service is from the idea of residential straight to downtown Royal Oak and maybe some other destinations along the way, but primarily that's what the focus is, that to me would be almost new service, because it wouldn't be really regional. It'd be mainly the city connecting to the regional source of other smart routes and then beyond there. And I know like Livonia actually has their own bus service, and it's the same concept as you can go anywhere you want in the city of Livonia, but if you have a doctor who's in Farmington Hills, you could live 2 blocks from the doctor's office across the border, Livonia won't take you there.
And
That's out
their
of the
service
jurisdiction.
is reservation service.
Theirs is, yes.
So it's, you can't just get an app on there and the thing comes and picks you up.
Correct.
So all of this, drawing lines on a map, and Dave, I went old school here with the,
I'm seeing.
yeah, the pink are the schools.
I got it.
All the, drawing lines is easy to do. But then where do you go from there? We've heard a lot about, different options. So there's obviously, we have to set goals or in some way, like where is coverage, what we're looking for, is ridership what we're looking for, are we looking to, get people into town, so I'm not even exactly sure where to start thinking about how to design a system. It just seems very daunting to me. Obviously, there's trade-offs. And with $100 for each service hour, it obviously adds up quickly. So do you want to, I've seen some articles where they discuss, spreading it out or spreading it thin. Do you care more about coverage as opposed to frequency? So these are a lot of questions that I have, like I'm not even exactly sure where to start dealing with all of that.
I think when it comes to any questions about the routing, that really comes down to public outreach. You need to figure out, where are your residents trying to go? Are your residents trying to get to Beaumont because they work or maybe have, family members or friends who have doctor's appointments there? Are they trying to get to the zoo and they are the individual who doesn't want to walk 1 mile, so they're just going to drive there? Are they trying to get to downtown to go out to eat? Or maybe they are trying to travel outside of the boundaries, but slightly outside. Maybe that's one thing that they struggle with as well, is just they don't want to have to drive to go to, downtown Birmingham, and they live at 14 Mile, but they have to because that's maybe the only option at the time. So I think public outreach is where you need to start and really get a sense of where your residents live, where they're going, and what times of day are they going there. And then from that point, sometimes the routes will kind of naturally work themselves out. You kind of see a trend of a lot of people who may live in the northwest quadrant who, for some reason, are all going down to downtown Royal Oak. Maybe they all work down there. So you'll kind of start seeing the routes form based off your input.
So how far will people actually walk to a bus?
Usually, studies show that people usually walk a half a mile, 3/4 of a mile on a nice day. And I would almost kind of say that would almost be less for Metro Detroit because of our whole car-centric mentality. So I know I'm fortunate. I live down in Ferndale. I'm fortunate I live right on Woodward, so I pick up the Woodward bus right there. But I know individuals who may live, 2 blocks deeper into the city, and they say, oh, no, the bus is too far away. I'm like, it's like a 15-minute walk. That's nothing. But we're very fortunate in Detroit that everything is car-centric, so you almost have to make it even more appealing for them to take the bus.
And so, looking at our map here, and there are lines, obviously there's 8 lines, and they cross each other. Oh, look, it's actually, my old school map is on TV now. The lines cross each other, so clearly some of these you would have to transfer to get to one place to another. So is there like a rule about transfers? Do people hate them? Is it easy? Is it, if there's 3 transfers, nobody will do it? Is there like a rule about that, or?
It depends on how well the buses are scheduled, and that also kind of could tie into the whole flexible schedules or flexible routing. Is one of the downsides of flexible routing is the fact that there may not be such finite time points. So if you have someone who is commonly transferring from one line to another, and it's a flex route where the bus may not always get there at 10:55, but their transfer bus always gets there at 10:55, then it causes them to miss transfers, which means it's a longer wait time. So the least amount of transfers is preferred, but we know that it's not possible for everyone to go straight from their house to their exact destination every single time. I mean, that's what a cab and a Lyft does, but it's more expensive to do that.
And then it's, somebody else probably has questions, I would guess. But are you familiar with planning for public transit and public school kids? Is this something we can?
We do have experience with it. I know we have altered our 430 line, which runs up Main Street. And we do have, during the school hours, it does deviate from Main Street to service the middle school and I believe the high school as well. So we do have experience with that. And we do have quite a few kids who take our Woodward bus. If they may live in another community but go to school in another community, they can take the Woodward bus as well. So we do have experience with school kids. And that's just something that once we kind of start getting a good sense of what the needs are of the kids, that would be how we determine the move further.
Anybody else have a question here? I'm sorry, go ahead, Paul.
When you were presenting, you skipped a bullet point I was interested in.
Okay.
In between the end of management possibilities and the beginning of city roles, there was this smart can assist in capital procurements that got skipped over. I was just curious how could smart assist?
I think that's, and then again, that's outside my department, so I don't want to go into too much about it. But we do have a procurement department that helps with acquiring buses and shelters and the items that go into that. So as part of a CPP, you may be able to get additional assistance with that. I don't know what the assistance is, but it may be either we may be able to work that process through, or maybe just as simple as just helping you figure out the whole procurement process if you're not familiar with that particular sector.
I had a second question. You mentioned the Grosse flex route.
Yeah.
And I was just curious if you had any sense of how much usage there is to that?
Well, I think some anecdotal sense anyway. It doesn't seem like it's got a lot of usage. It's a situation where I believe there was a fixed route bus service on Grosse. They took that away, replaced it with a flex route, because there's still a lot of destinations in that zone that need service, Macomb Community College, a couple of hospitals, county office building. And this was seen as a way to preserve that service, but it hasn't quite taken off. It could be, when I look at it, it could be because the zone is so large that it's kind of hard to provide reliable service at the time points within such a large zone. And it's harder for people to kind of understand how it works because it's so big. So that's my guess of why it doesn't work very well. I think we might have looked at that a year or two ago. I'd have to go back and look to see if we've got specific numbers. But so I wouldn't use that as an example of, well, you shouldn't do that anywhere. But this particular example, mixed results, I would say.
Thank you.
I was seeing these examples around the country where they really were giving it 2 years. They weren't, like, after a year, they weren't saying, boy, was that a failure. They really, 2 years, you really have to, and it's not just about, it's not just about advertising it, it's about just having good service, frankly. Brian?
Knowing you don't probably have numbers, and of course, does it cost more to operate a flex system versus a fixed system?
I would guess yes, it does, because the thing is you have more mileage that the bus is going to have to travel because it's deviating from the route, and that's more gas, more wear and tear on the vehicle, and that may also increase your deadhead hours as well. So I would fathom yes, but
I do want a question, and I'm taking it to an extreme here and not advocating for it, but let's say, for example, you have a neighborhood and you have a flex system. I mean, could that system be designed to pick up students at their homes and take them to the elementary school? I mean, it's probably a very high cost situation because you have a half hour in the morning that you're picking up 20 different homes. It's not very efficient, but could it operate like that?
yeah, I mean, that's how a lot of suburbs with their bus system do it now. I mean, they just pick up every student at every single house, but it's going to increase your cost, and you're going to have an additional vehicle just for that. And it's going to be more complicated for sure.
But a flex system could work to bring kids to school if, because it's only going to be used, and again, not advocating for every house, but it's only going to be used in the morning and the afternoon. So you could plan for that. You could have a couple stops in a neighborhood and on that route, call it a flex and do that.
Could do that.
Also, if I can ask one more question?
Yeah, sure, ask as many as you want.
So in looking at the map here, one thing I notice is the green line goes by what we're going to have, a beautiful new park and hopefully with a nice little water feature there. So when we look at weekday versus weekend routes, do people get confused? Does it make sense to have different routes on the weekend versus a weekday? Because I see the demands being different. Like the zoo, for example, is going to be very popular on the weekend. This new park hopefully will be very popular. A few other areas more popular on the weekends than the weekdays. Does that confuse people, or is that something cities normally do, have different operations for weekend versus weekday?
It's definitely going to come down to education on that, because it will confuse people. I know we do have a few routes. I mean, right now, any of our routes that service the city of Detroit, before our new service starts next month, any of our routes that go into the city of Detroit, they only go in during rush hour times.
Okay.
So the Woodward route travels down Woodward, and if it's not rush hour, it stops at the State Fair and turns around and heads back north. During rush hour, it does come into the city, and people are used to that now. But if you're not from around here and you want to take the bus to Detroit and you're a tourist and you come down and the bus just ends at the fairgrounds, you're kind of lost because I thought this was going to Detroit. So it would take a lot of education, and also it would take a lot of, people may become accustomed to what their line's called and where the line goes. You may almost be better off almost making a weekend only line. And you could do that. I mean, we have weekday, like the 4:30 is a weekday only line that runs. It doesn't run on the weekends. And so you could have a weekend only line that may service a section of the city and take you straight to the zoo, and it just doesn't service any other day.
Okay.
And then there's flexibility, obviously, between peak times and non-peak times, like you were just talking about.
Exactly.
So Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night operate more frequently than Monday and Tuesday night, just because there's more nightlife in downtown Royal Oak.
Correct. And it all comes down to your scheduling and then also how you present it to the public. So that way they know, maybe you do kind of a fluctuation of head times. Maybe on Monday and Tuesday nights for downtown Royal Oak, it's 30-minute headways, but on Friday and Saturday, it's 15. It just comes down to education to make sure that people are aware that those is changed depending on the day and depending on the time of day.
Everybody will want to take the bus on Monday night to go to city commission meetings, however.
I'm sure.
I would think, yes.
Sure it'll be full.
Now, we did learn that our senior transportation is good, but not really good. And so if we, one of my priorities is to make sure we make our senior transportation better and expand it to nights and weekends. We already have the system, so it is simply a matter of expanding it to nights and weekends. How do we get a handle on how much that costs?
Well, the senior transportation, I don't believe the cost will change for the actual routing and whatnot. Really what it comes down to benefit the seniors would be just making sure that your vehicles are ADA accessible. And so I know some communities like the whole idea of a trolley car, or a trolley bus to go through downtown, and it's cute. It looks fun, but most trolleys are not ADA accessible. Most of them have just the old-fashioned wooden steps and wooden seats and metal handles to hold on to. And for someone who may, have a bad hip or may, just not move the way they used to, that could just deter them from taking it right there. So you want to make sure that you have a bus that's ADA accessible, that may have a lift available if someone is in a wheelchair. And that way, that would be accommodating to your seniors without really changing a lot from the overall planning.
The demand response service that we have now, the reservation service, I guess, if we expanded that, do you know, is that just more of a matter of funding on our part?
Pretty much. And if there's ever something transportation-wise that you wish we could do, or that, I'm shocked that they don't do this or do that, it always comes down to funding. Is we have a budget. We really do everything we possibly can with the budget that we have, but for the amount that we have for this region, it's a lot thinner than other metropolitan areas have. So
Found that out last week, yeah. It was $72 per person or some kind of crazy thing, where the next one is $130 per person, Cleveland, I think.
Yep.
Brian?
I do have another question. It sounds like there's no app developed for, like, for example, if I'm standing in the corner of, wherever, Main and 4th, some cities have an app where I can go in there and say, all right, here I am, I want to go here, and it'll tell me which buses I can take or what are my options. Does Smart have that right now?
We don't have our own particular app. Our app, you have to pick your stop, but I know it's called Google, it may be called Google Transit. That app is starting to kind of take that into account. So you can say, I'm at this point, I'm trying to get to this point, and it will direct you, say, walk a couple blocks here or jump on the bus there.
Yeah, I think it might actually be called the Transit app. So there you go. It's kind of, you can pick your system or where you live, and it'll show you all of your options.
So I think for some demographics of the city, I almost see that as a necessity to have that sort of functionality, especially if we're talking about a flex system. Because how do you tell the bus where you are, where you want to be picked up? I guess I see it.
Okay. Didn't I understand that on demand would not really work with a transit app? A transit app is just telling you what standard routes are in place, right? An on-demand where you're trying to get picked up someplace or make something happen in a more flexible way, that would be a city-specific app.
It could be. I think Transit app at least has some functionality where it links with Uber and that kind of thing. So there could be, you could extend it too, if you make it available in a format that the app can use. But there are a lot of other sort of off-the-shelf apps that you wouldn't necessarily have to develop your own app from scratch, if that's what you're concerned about.
Right. And these apps are changing all the time. I'm sure when you get down the road, down maybe 6 months to a year, there's going to be a whole plethora of new apps that are going to benefit for the system. So that's kind of cart before the horse mentality, but I'm sure there'll be an app that will be compatible with this service that you guys are proposing.
So I was looking at, I get an email about, I don't know, from mass transit, or one of the things where they're always looking for bid, it's, they're out for RFPs. And people are, all over this country are looking for someone to develop an app, run an app, use an app, how much does an app cost? Everybody wants them in some way or another, so I don't think we probably don't have to invent one. In fact, a couple of the things I sent you was one about Pantonium, and it does an app thing, and there's Via Transit and some other ones that are out there. All of them have heard about, I don't know how they hear about these things, but they've all contacted me. Good. By being in the newspaper, I guess. So I don't know if they're willing to come here and talk to us about how their technology works, or, so we'll figure that out for one of our work sessions, I think. Anybody else have a question? Eileen? Oh, I'm sorry.
I was reading in our Royal Oak little brochure here that the connector service, anyone, the general public can ride this bus. They live with a third of a mile from a fixed route?
Correct.
So how do they go about doing that? They, flag them down, or they have to call?
Those are pre-scheduled.
They're all pre-scheduled.
You would call customer service and pre-schedule. Usually it's a couple days out. And I do know our connector service is very heavily used. And
it is very heavily used.
It is to the point that we're having trouble keeping up with the demand. Because again, we have a certain budget that we allocated for it, and it's gotten so much use that it is tough. It's almost kind of become primarily for medical appointments now because of how much of a demand we've gotten on it. But it is pre-scheduled though.
Yeah, so go ahead.
No, I was just going to, I was thinking that if we had our fixed route service with some flexibility services, that the connector service might decrease.
Potentially, if you have routes, like again, a lot of the connector services are doctor's appointments. So if you have a plethora of residents in a certain part of Royal Oak who keep going to Beaumont for doctor's appointments, and you have a fixed route that goes in that direction, yeah, it would probably take down the demand of the amount of people making connector appointments.
So as far as the cost of service, would that be better for Royal Oak or not?
I think it would be mutually beneficial.
Okay.
See, for me, I just walk right out onto 13 Mile and get on the 13 Mile bus. Perfect. I hope I don't have to go to the hospital, however. Is anybody else, Shar?
So, last week I needed to go downtown Detroit to a morning meeting. And I, pulled up, inspired by Ms. Donigan here, I pulled up the Reflex bus schedule and looked at it and tried to figure out when I would have to leave and when it would let me off and how long I'd have to wait to come back. I went through that process, which is way harder and stranger than picking up my car keys and putting on my coat. How do you, I'm interested in sort of the cultural educational process. How do you build understanding and acceptance of that, the difficulty or the need to sort of change your whole mind think about what you're gonna wear, that you need a coat, that you need boots, that you're gonna have to carry whatever you buy home with you. And that's like a big question, but, take a swing at it.
Well, I definitely think it's educational. It's going to come. It's a kind of a partnership. It's learning from your own experience. So you're probably going to do that one grocery shopping trip where you're going to buy your normal lot of groceries and then realize, okay, I have to carry these all back now. So it's going to be educational on the person, but then also that's where anytime you do new service or you do changes to transit, educating from the provider as well and kind of giving a heads up. I know there's kind of a trend right now, and again, this is other cities because they have bigger budgets, but there's a trend right now of creative advertisements to kind of give you rules of the bus, but in a creative way. So, they may make like a cartoon or whatnot, and they always point to the fact that you can't carry a lot of items. The items need to fit on your lap. You can't just hog a bunch of seats with your items. Or that, you have to board and have your fare ready because you don't want to hold up someone. So maybe a cartoon of someone just staying there fidgeting in their pockets and everyone else getting angry about it. So there's a lot of different ways, but it's all educational. And it is going to be a longer process for Metro Detroit compared to others because we are fortunate, again, with having the car. And I think once people realize that they can maybe access downtown Royal Oak restaurants via this bus, as opposed to scrambling for parking and then dealing with the pay stations, which are a little complicated, I will add, and figuring out, the order you have to pay it in, I forgot my license plate. It's kind of that same feeling. Once they kind of realize that maybe it's a little easier for the bus, they'll kind of learn that process just like they had to learn how to use a pay station.
But of course, they have to want to learn.
That's true. And the want, unfortunately, you can't teach them. It has to come from within.
Well, I learned by not wanting to spend $40 to go to a Lions game. It really got me right away. I went to graduate school in Philadelphia, so I learned how to use transit when I lived there. And I had a wheelie cart for my grocery shopping and a backpack. And then when I moved back here, I lived with that backpack. We didn't even have nice backpacks then. I sound old, but now everybody has a backpack. The little kids had but I had a backpack, and I moved back here, and I thought, how am I gonna? I tried to use the backpack, and then I didn't need it anymore. I felt bad about the backpack because you just don't use them. But when you take transit, you need to have all of those things, and it's just something that you learn, I believe. I really do. It's a backpack.
Sorry about the backpack.
I know.
I had a question about, so I'm just working through my mind the different sorts of people. We've been talking about seniors and maybe the need to get to medical. Of course, seniors also want to come hang out in the city and have dinner and happy hour like anybody else. But you do usage, right? So is there a way you think about groups, school age versus senior versus millennials who are interested in, public transportation in a way maybe the boomers weren't? Do you have categories in your mind when you're thinking about usage?
Kind of, sort of. I mean, we definitely think of service, but then once you start getting into all the details, you do start thinking about all that. You think about the seniors who need to have the bus be ADA accessible. Then you think about the millennials who want Wi-Fi and want all the special amenities and the apps. And then you think of the kids who may come in groups and they also need to be safe. So maybe you have security cameras for the kids and making sure that maybe your drivers are able to handle, a rambunctious group of kids who may not know where they're going, but, they can help them their way. So it's all the details about it. The routes and the scheduling and all that, that's just logistics, but then you finite the details as you go through it for each group of people you're trying to serve.
Another group that just came to my mind, of course, is people who are trying to get 2 jobs.
Mm-hmm.
And, there's a huge segment of our Metro Detroit that have kind of job desert almost, right? They need to get to where a job is, and often that could be in a suburb like Royal Oak.
Mm-hmm.
So connectivity to existing DDOT and SMART into the city of Royal Oak could be a huge benefit for and people who need to employ those people, right? Reliable workforce showing up at a reasonable, close to on time. That would be a whole nother category, right?
Correct. And the new service that we're doing, once that gets going, that may alter your routing as well, because I know right now all the routes meet in downtown Royal Oak, but the new service, with it running continuously through the city of Detroit, that kind of takes care of that, job desert that previously they may have to take a DDOT bus and then transfer to a SMART bus and then transfer to another bus to get to downtown Royal Oak. Now, if we have that bus that runs continuously, maybe you may reroute and say, hey, we want to stop at 11 miles. So that way, that quick service stops at 11 Mile, they get off the bus, maybe came from somewhere in Detroit, and they jump right into this Royal Oak bus and they can get straight to their job. Mm-hmm. So that's something that, again, will kind of come over time, but forming your service to meet the needs is what's most important.
Right.
And that was one of the things I heard about early on is the service personnel that work at our restaurants and even Starbucks. People having to get to work at 7 o'clock in the morning, and then they stay until obviously 2 o'clock in the morning, the next morning when they're done, when the restaurant closes, is you have this issue. And it costs money to hire and fire people, so having a stable workforce is very important. So making those connections is really, really important, and I think important for our business community. We're going to hear from our business community one of these days. They couldn't come tonight or last week, but we'll get somebody here, I think, because I think we really need to get that in the record. Does anybody else have a question? Dave?
So this flexible riding thing is intriguing to me only because trying to figure out how to make it as convenient as possible for a user to be able to take advantage and plug into a system, to plug into, whether this fixed route structure, as well as plug into the broader regional transit system. So how do you go about figuring that out and planning the development of that? I guess, do you start, what's the method of figuring that out? Because as I'm looking at this map and trying to say, are there routes that can be taken off if you incorporate a flexible route into it, that it can absorb it, and if you increase frequency so that it doesn't delay the trip. I guess I'm trying to think through who does it, how does it get done, what's the feedback, and almost how do you, is there a way to garner, if they're, presented to the public, and would you use this? Is this something that to change behavior to, Commissioner Douglas was talking about, to take advantage of this to meet the transit needs that you individually have?
Let's tackle that. Well,
before you start that, so coming into the Grosse one, people have to call for that, right? They pick up they dial a telephone number, they schedule it. I mean, like that. That's a tough sell. I mean, I don't think I would ever do that. No. But if I have to believe the technology exists that says, bloop, I'm ready, and the little device will tell me it will be there within this, between this window of time or whatever. And then I'm like, I'll be ready at that time.
yes, well, that's kind of the good news is that the technology does exist to do exactly that.
Okay.
And I think that's what's kind of causing a resurgence in these flexible transit models where the first generation was public transit agencies just doing it because they didn't want a full-size bus running there anymore. It wasn't efficient, but it didn't really have much of a benefit as far as a ridership perspective or anything. But now, with the technology piece, it's a lot more accessible to people, and they can see how it fits in with all of their other options, which is really important too. So with that, it kind of makes the rest of it, the actual planning of the service kind of fun, because you also get a lot of data coming in from this app that shows where, when, and how people are using it. You don't have to get somebody out on the street at a bus stop counting people anymore. You just know, you get that data report like every month or something like that, and you can adjust your service too based on that data. So you don't have to have.
Uber already knows this.
Yeah,
They know
exactly.
exactly where this flexible.
Yeah,
route
and they're happy to sell you that information too if you want now. So that's the other side of it. But you can take that information and change it, as you go, which is also useful, and communicate it back to people immediately.
Now, the only thing with the flex route that I've read some things about that could be a downside is, like our concern on wanting people to choose this over driving. You really have to make it convenient. You have to make it something they can plan on. With the flex route, the only downside is you could be on a bus, you could be going on a route, and normally that route could only take you 5 minutes. If it's a flex route and all of a sudden someone clocks and says, oh, I want to be picked up 2 blocks off the route, now that person who's on the bus who normally only have a 5-minute ride may have a 7-minute ride or a 10-minute ride. And then when you start making their rides longer, they may be deterred and say, I could have just driven here, dealt with the mess of parking and paid for it for, half the amount of time. So you have to do flex route very cautiously because you don't want it to become too much of a deterrent from people just choosing to drive because it's quicker.
I did give you this. It's called microtransit. Is it really a city thing? And it's exactly that. It says, like, because I was saying before, is when you look at these things on the internet, they look great, and then you find out that the application of them didn't work exactly the way that they thought they were going to work, and so you can't bank everything on it. So just approaching it with caution, I think is really an important thing to do. But it seems like it's something that would work in some way for us here in Royal Oak. So I think it's something worth exploring. But I think read the article. It's pretty short, but it's very important, I think. Does anybody have any more questions for these folks? No, I do get Dave's questions like, now what do we do? We have, like, how do we go from lines on a map to something that we can wrap our heads around? And that's a really important question.
I think we were talking about doing a survey to see what.
Right, we're gonna,
know,
we will get to, we're gonna do that.
What do people want out there?
We've been able to count on SMART as our partners to help us through the system. We assume we could keep continuing to count on SMART to help us maybe go to the next step in some way. Dave?
Yeah, well, I guess one question to help inform the planning. So we have an existing system. There's some people from Royal Oak that are using it. So we using our inter-senior focus program, the connector program, and then the broader SMART system. Is there a way to get the information about roughly how many people in this area, I guess, being picked up in this area, dropped off in this area, to help inform, kind of starting out of the gate, there's demand of X amount of people that are using the existing system, where this is designed to enhance that to actually, support mobility. I'd like to think that's also helping get people to those main routes that they're also using as almost a kind of a starting point. Like, this is how many people are using it currently, and then the idea here is to figure out how can we design this in such a way to maximize those who would choose to use this if it was convenient. And that to me is the hard nut that we have to figure out how to.
I think I think you weren't here when he was saying, maybe you, I don't know. The only way to really start is with public engagement.
It is. And
I was here for that.
like having your stakeholders
Thanks
here,
for pointing it out.
it's good to talk to your stakeholders and figure out where the problems are that they're having, determine, where a lot of people maybe like certain quadrants of the city maybe having more difficulty than others, really getting a sense of where all the needs are at, and then you shape kind of a mock-up system like this, then you bring out to the public and just get public feedback. I mean, someone may bring up an issue about the green route that on paper it looks fine, and like, oh, but remember it dead ends randomly there, and it's like, oh, we didn't realize that, or maybe that's a tight turn to do. So the public can give you a lot of information. They usually give you too much information, but it's so much that you can work with that it really can shape the system to what it needs to be.
Yes.
So I will point out that this past fall, the city did its biannual, I never know what that is, biannual.
Every other year?
Yes, thank you, citizen survey, which is a statistically reliable quantitative study with a bunch of questions about how satisfied people are with, local government as compared to across the state of Michigan and the country. And one of the questions that Marie and I slipped into the study was, would you use public transportation if it was frequent, safe, affordable, and easy? And 45% of the respondents said yes. We had a little over 25% say no, but that leaves us with another 25% that are not sure, and let us hope they're persuadable.
Well, and I'm not an expert on that survey, but I understand that, and Judy is out there, that 45 is good.
That's beyond critical mass in almost everything in the world.
45 is good in a car-centric area like this. In an area where there is an abundance of parking, you only have a couple of small zones that have difficulty with parking, 45% is good.
Oh, thanks.
It's a place to start.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to, which we'll talk about, we'll probably talk about it now, but it comes down to us being, the big us, putting together a public engagement program that's meaningful, that is informative and gets the information people want. When I present this to people, just random people, at various places, they think it's interesting, but they think of, and no offense to Smart Bus, but they think of the 4:30 bus that comes in the morning and at night, and so they can't imagine it being not that, they can't imagine it being something else. But once you just, they think about, using it to get downtown, they think that's a good idea. So that's just random people on the street. School people really want it to have that option to get to the schools. And so it's going to be, I'm not sure how to design a system to work with our schools, and I don't know who does. I mean, I know there's people, transit planners, who do that for a living probably. I don't know if anybody in SMART, if you know that, or, I know.
I don't know that specifically, but I can say a really simple public engagement you can do, and we did this in our recent public engagement with our new services. We were trying to figure out the downtown routing, downtown Detroit, and where our bus needs to drop off at. And all you can do is you could do a blank map of Royal Oak and just have people come in and just mark, where are you going?
Right.
Mark on a map. And that will give you your clusters and determine where your routes really need to go. Because when we did that for our downtown map, we realized that we needed to access certain points on the west side of downtown as well as certain points on the east side. And we thought only maybe one side of downtown needed to be addressed. But really found out it was actually overall. So that's something you can do that's really cost effective, that could give you some really good public.
Well, I know we want to, and part of what Commissioner Douglas was talking about is I want people, if we can, to start thinking about public transportation as something you would use every day. Like, where do you go? Where's your mother live? Where does your kid go to school? Where's your dentist? And just, not just something for a special event or just Saturday night, but something you might use every day. And if they start thinking of it that way, then we'll probably get different results. We have 2 cars. My car is really old, and I don't want to buy a second car. So I say to myself, although when I was without a car for 2 weeks, I thought, what was I thinking? But But I really don't want to buy another car, so I want to be able to rely on some other form of transportation. And so cars are expensive.
Amen. So I happen to have 5 children, not all of them live with me, but
Snow
there's
emergencies
a
must be
ridiculous
great.
number of cars in my life, and insuring them all is painful. Which brings me to my question. I don't know if this falls in the kind of work you do in your life, but even just you think about transit. You've used a couple of times this phrase that went something like, fortunate enough to be in a car-centric community. I'm not sure that I buy fortunate in that sentence. We certainly do live in a car-centric community. But when I look at my car insurance bill, I'm not sure it's all that fortunate. When I think, there are 7 drivers in my life, we could get by on less than 7 cars, I'm pretty sure, including the insurance that goes with them. So my real question is, when you think about pitching transit, and talking it up in a car-centric community, what are the wins? What are the things you would sell it? What do you talk about?
Well, with transit, you definitely want to make sure, again, you're selling a product that's going to be comparable to a car. I like to always tell people, it seems like, and a lot of people say millennials do this, but I've seen older people do this as well, so this is everyone's problem, is being on your phone, whether it's calling, texting. Pretty much texting and calling is the same distraction. I know we only outlaw texting in this state, but we should outlaw both. But, on a bus, you can text and call all you want. Call maybe keep the voice down so not everyone else has to hear your conversation. But, you can do all your business and all your work while you're on your way to a job or on your way to a restaurant, whatnot. So that's a huge benefit where people always complain that, I'm always working in my car. Well, you can work on a bus and get there safely. And you are healthier when you take a bus. I mean, you can look at a lot of people who take public transit and they're carrying backpacks and they're carrying everything with them. And just that extra exercise of walking. Yeah. And I think that's why we see so many people around here who maybe have weight issues, because we park right in front of the door that we walk into, and that's the only exercise we're getting, as opposed to in mass urban areas where, you're walking 5 blocks to get to the grocery store. You're walking everywhere. So it's a healthier lifestyle, and you'll live longer if you're healthier. Mm-hmm. And also the car insurance, it is high, and depending on how often you use your car, it's probably cheaper taking public transit. But in the mindset that you have to drive everywhere, people think, I can't afford this car insurance. Well, you could afford transit and get rid of the car insurance, you may actually save money in the long run. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would start with promoting transit.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Not to mention the cost of a DUI, which is about $10,000 now, from what I understand.
Oh.
Now, this is a question that I hadn't anticipated to ask, but back in the Martin lines back then, those buses were polluting. So do buses pollute anymore? Or is it better, if you have 20 people on a bus as opposed to 20 cars? So I don't know, I assume our buses are energy efficient.
Yeah, we have clean diesel buses, we have propane buses. The pollution is dramatically less than what the old buses have.
You're not spewing black smoke in the air anymore.
And you can also think of not necessarily just spewing smoke, but the amount of concrete and asphalt we have because of all the cars that we have. If you had more people on buses, you wouldn't need these large, expansive parking lots, which by freeing up that what is concrete, but by freeing it up and having it wetland again, that's actually better for the environment. So it is better for everyone to be on public transit.
And I think people don't come down to Royal Oak as often as they would, I should speak for myself, but, because, sometimes it is challenging to get a parking space. I can always get a parking space. However, if I could just get on a bus at 13 in Maine and come down here for dinner, I'd do it every time.
I agree. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I have a question. Now that joined this group, when I'm out driving, I'm looking at all the buses, I'm looking at bus stops, where are they, is anybody in them?
And focus on the road.
Yeah, I'm trying to, I'm not on my phone, I'm not on my phone. I'm not texting, but but, so anyways, this morning I was driving around 12:30 on 10 Mile between Southfield and Telegraph. Okay, now it's 2-3 miles. I was trying to find out how many bus stops there were along there, or did I see any buses? I didn't see any buses. I saw several bus stops, shelters, and they were all empty. And then I saw one, there were probably more, the one I saw didn't have a shelter. So how do you determine all that? Were those shelters full in the morning, say, for going to work, and they not used during the day? How does that work?
We do have data that allows us to see how many people get on and off at certain stops. And we do try to put shelters at stops that have that. The data isn't specific on saying, we have 15 people getting on at noon. So it probably was a morning rush hour shelter that you were looking at. I know where I get on the bus at, if you drive by it normally, you would think the same thing. You'd be like, why is there a shelter here? There's a cemetery right next to it. There's no way that there's this many people waiting. But in the morning, a lot of people from the neighborhood comes in and picks up at that one spot. That's the reason why the shelter is there. So it is based off of the amount of people at a stop. We do also have sometimes where residents reach out to us, individuals who may have a long transfer point, depending on how they're transferring from buses, and maybe, hey, I have a bad back, and it'd really help if there was a bench here. Sometimes we look at situations like that as well to try to accommodate, but it's primarily by usage is where we determine that.
I think you have a new, I'm sorry.
So that 10-mile route then is not utilized much between certain hours. That would be limited service on that.
Correct, and it may be something too. And I'm trying to visualize exactly where you're at, but it may be something too where we do have some buses like the 430 where it only has some routes in the morning and some routes in the afternoon. It doesn't have midday service, so it may be something along those lines as well.
And the people there's very few at a bus stop, they just have to get wet and freeze to death.
We don't have to be that graphic, but that's what's the benefit of having the app and having the tracking system on the buses is hopefully they won't have to be out there waiting a long time.
We won't do that in Royal Oak.
Good.
But it is, when I started talking about transit a decade ago, the whole idea of, the whole idea of being able to have something on your computer, which was called Next Bus, where you could see where the bus was, so you could be in your office and get out there just in time instead of having to get out there and wait for an hour. And I used to say that in every city, that's what they do, and here in Michigan, you stand at the curb and you look down the street, which is sort of still what you do, but really you don't, because now you really do have apps at work.
Well, on that stretch, I couldn't figure out where the people came from to use these shelters. And you were saying that usually people have to walk maybe half a mile. So I thought maybe they dropped out of the sky.
That road goes to Lawrencetown.
Well, and some people do. Some people do walk farther depending on where their job is.
Yeah.
Like, especially a lot of people I've heard stories of people who worked in Macomb County and a lot of the factories. Obviously, it's impossible for bus routes to access all those, and there's such expansive factories. Some people do walk farther, but that's what they do for the job, So.
And really, it's all about money. If you had more money, you would have more frequent service. It went more places, so.
Exactly.
We could talk about transit all night long, because I know I could, but if we don't have any more questions, we'll let them go. I can always bring them back.
You can, and you have my phone number. So.
I do, and I have your email.
Yep, you do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having us.
Now, so we're gonna wrap it up here, but I'd like to have a discussion a little bit about sort of what your first impressions after 2 meetings and learning a little bit about transit. What comes to the top of your mind? Just a couple of comments. Brian, I'm calling on you first.
All right, well, that's fine. Actually, I was making some notes here. I'll be at less than a minute. I still think the concept is wonderful. I like it, but what I really want to look at is what I said in the first meeting of how to stack up to the next best alternative. So I kind of look at if we were just to say subsidize Uber for everyone, how is the mass transit better than that? And how is it cheaper? Can you not put the environmental impact maybe into quantitative terms, but a qualitative aspect? Something else that came up for me also is for the major stakeholders in this, and when I say stakeholders, I'm not talking about the residents, more of the entities that will benefit from it. So we heard from the zoo, we heard from Beaumont, certainly the school district, but also the city itself. Are they willing to contribute anything to make this a success? And I think that's a question I want to look at going forward, because certainly all the entities will benefit. I won't go into the notes of how they will, but that's something else I'd like to look at before possibly going out and identifying funding sources for our plan there. And also, I just want to spend a little bit more time talking about who are the key demographics we're going after. As an example, we looked at the minimum option here, which was the first option presented, and I'm pulling it up on the screen in front of me here, but the assumption for that was 6-hour service nights on a weekday. So if we say that, and I'm not saying that's our goal, but if we're saying that's what we want to look at, then we're really saying this isn't for the school district, this isn't for people working during the week, it's purely for the seniors to get home from the appointments from the point-to-point service they're using now. So really to dive into who do we propose are going to use the bus, and I think that's, or the network, and that's really going to tie into drawing the map, and that's where I'm really excited about the public engagement. So that's my little spiel.
Anybody want to go next?
Yeah, I will. I don't want to, the idea of having some type of on and off system in the city get lost in the shuffle. I think that we have to consider individuals that want to spend time in the city, not just have point to point, as you said, but coming in, spending the day possibly, and being able not to have to, if they go to a movie, they want to go to dinner, then they want to do something else, they can have a simple transit system within the city proper, not the whole city of Royal Oak, but the business section. I think that's what I'm talking about. So and maybe think about a park and ride somewhere. And I think it's very fragmented and convoluted, and I'm very, very confused.
We'll get some clarity to you. It'd be a nice app.
You wouldn't be the only one. Dave, I guess you?
Yeah, I agree with, the previous comments. There's two things that, maybe three things that I'm hyper zoned in on. I think one is figuring out, can this kind of flex route technology strategy work to get people who would be willing to, want to, and need to within the city boundaries get to where they need to be, whether it's within the jurisdiction of Royal Oak or plug into the exterior thing. So that's and how that looks and who's doing it well. And it seems to me just where the technology is that we're very much on the cutting edge of trying to figure out have this conversation. And this could be a massive experiment that if we succeed, we will be the model for the world. Or if the technology is not there yet, it's not going to meet the need that exists there. The other two groups, the two areas I think that we have in pretty short order, we have an ability to dramatically improve the ability to help people get from where they are to where they need to, is in the school space. And part of me wonders if I need to turn the sheet over and think about, okay, where are our students, particularly with the middle school and the high school, and how do we, what's the number there, who's really needs to use it and wants to use it, and how do we get them where they're going, and then work in direct partnership, obviously, with the schools and to figure that out. And then lastly, I think it's great that the senior transit services that we have is woefully inadequate. I've just pulled back the layers. Is this is an easy opportunity. We can ramp up and improve that service to help seniors in this community be able to get where they need to. And then there's probably people in between, but I think I look at kind of those three buckets that I'm really interested in rolling up my sleeves and digging into, because I think we have, I'm glad we're having this conversation. I think that we could actually make measurable progress. And I think Brian sums it up best. That if subsidizing Uber is the best way to get people where they need to go, that's, fine. My gut tells me, is looking at transit systems around the country, that there is this happy medium, and I think that there's a demonstration. We've got incredible stakeholders in this community that are willing to lean in and work with us to figure this out. A city that's committed to investing in us to kind of come up with propose the plan. And so I think there's, I'm optimistic. I think it's, I don't know, am I achieving the assignment that you set out?
No, that's fine.
Is that okay? Are there questions I'm supposed to be posing?
No, I just wanted to know your first impressions, now that we've heard this, now what?
No, it's the other thing I'd say, that As you know, I mean, I've had an opportunity to interface with SMART a long time, and like I said this at the previous meeting, the transit system that we have in this area is designed to serve one purpose. It's to help, I mean, to get people who have no other option to get from point A to point B. And, I mean, the must riders, the have-to riders. And this really does help, I think, begin to bridge the gap of how, I mean, to engage the choice rider, the rider who would use this if it was safe, reliable, affordable, et cetera. And, I mean, that's what I'm actually most excited about. And I think I said it before as well. It's like, if it wasn't for the 450, I don't know how I would have gotten to school. I mean, I went to Wayne State. I picked it up at 13 in Woodward every day. And we had one car share between 3 people in our house. So it can be done.
I'm for it.
And it was like, literally, I was like, what? Mom would drop me off. I would come back. The car would be picking up there. I had to go pick my sister up. And we would that little neon would just zip around. It was our own Zip car before Zip was cool. But it's, and so for me, I mean, it was actually a necessity. I don't know how, I mean, otherwise it would have worked. And it worked great. I think the comments of like lifestyle, like it was the best 30 minutes of my day. I mean, I just like read, chilled. We weren't supposed to bring food on or consume food, but everyone did.
Didn't have a phone then either.
Didn't have cell phones, right? No, it was like I was cramming for exams. So I think it's, I also look at this as like, how does this plug into that infrastructure? And so for the recreation opportunities, I mean, whether it's the games or entertainment in the city or elsewhere, no, I think we're embarking on something that's, I mean, it's got a lot of potential, and I just think I am a little foggy about figuring out, oh, well, what's the exact next step and how we do this.
Okay, Commissioner, comments?
I'm keenly interested in really knowing what, as Brian suggested, the alternative would cost. I mean, we know that just off the top of our heads, what their minimum level of service is $2.2 million a year. Just taking that number, and I mean, because I know this, like the average ride-sharing ride is around $6. So divide that 2.2 million by $6, and you get 366,000 trips that 2.2 million would pay for. Now, how you raise that money is a horse of a different color, but still, I mean, that's a piece of information that we should not lose sight of. So that's one part of it, and then the other part of it is I immediately, because I work in marketing, I immediately leap to how will we change people's behavior, and what will it take to, I mean, where's the push and pull of how we would get people to, I mean, we have to get them to understand it enough to want to vote for it, because somewhere down the line here, there's a public vote coming. And you know, people are gonna have to spend money, and what are they gonna be willing to spend money on? So those are my questions, issues.
Becky?
I agree with everything that was said, and I definitely think with the public vote, I think that we really probably want to talk to the PTO presidents, because that's what I've at least noticed on the forums and stuff, is that people are like, why are you guys even doing this when you took away the school buses? So I think that that's something that we have to really figure out and address. And I mean, you've probably already heard it, I get in other countries that people have their collapsible wagon and they take their baby on a bus. My kid's in a car seat, probably till he's like 12, you know what I mean? Like, that's just the mom I'm gonna be, but, you know, I've never been on a bus. That's why I like the trolley style, 'cause, you know, the trolley in my mind looks, it seems like something that would work in this town, in like the downtown part. But
Yes.
the only other group that I thought might be interesting as well is, just because we have the big Arts, Beats, and Eats Festival with how many people and what parking does. It's, I know with Pronto, it is a pain for me to have my 75 employees. Nobody wants to go park at the high school and figure that out. So I think that it might be an interesting thing to figure out. Would they get more people? I'm assuming in Pontiac, a lot of people took the bus to Arts, Beats, and Eats back then, because that's I'm assuming that's a bus line, I don't know. But it might be an interesting thing with the whole parking and what that would do.
Paul?
Yeah, so it's hard to go last. Everybody said every good
I'm
stuff
like,
there
well,
is.
I'll
Oh,
go
you're gonna go last, yeah.
I don't
No,
know.
but I, you know, everywhere I go in the world, I use public transit except where I live. Because I live in a car-centric culture. And I think there's gotta be some things that can be done that make it better. I don't, you know, it's daunting. It's a huge task to talk about, and where do you start and all that stuff, yeah. One of the things as a realtor I'm interested in is the development of this community. We live, folks, in a wonderful location. Metro Detroit is on an upswing. Things have gone really well lately. Like, for instance, I'm selling houses to young people who move here for opportunity. I just want to say that again. I sell houses.
To Royal Oak,
to-
not
yeah,
just the
to,
region.
to young, well, Metro Detroit, but here in Royal Oak particularly. But I sell houses to people who move here for opportunity. And that, it was a long time I was able to say that out loud, right? I've watched young people leave our communities for opportunity for a lot of years. So we have new development here in our local Royal Oak, here in Metro Detroit. We have some unique opportunities as we have this sort of upswing. And I still believe the battle belongs to the bold. We can make Royal Oak the place to be in Metro Detroit, you know, as we take advantage of these opportunities. And people, by the way, who are moving here are very used to public transit, even though some of us who grew up here aren't. I grew up in Flint, where we had buses, and I grew up going to school on a bus, and
Flint has a great transit system.
yeah, well, so we had one car at our house too, so. So anyway, I think that, you know, it's hard to say from here that the map we saw today with fixed routes is the way to go. I would say it is a whole lot of exploring to do, but we've already said all that, so.
So I'm not gonna be profound, but, it is, I mean, I've been talking about transit for so long, a lot of it's talking to myself, but, it's to sit here and talk about public transportation in the city I grew up in after all these years is really, fantastic. Like I said, I really wanna be able to operate with just one car, it's just me, but I'm sure there's other people who would like that too. And not have it be, you know, so I can only go to the grocery store on Tuesday, because I go to the grocery store every day, I think we've talked about that. I go every day, I see her at the grocery store every day, or I could see you there every day. I really am interested in getting people into Royal Oak, visitors. I want people to feel welcome here, like coming here is a real great opportunity, like I do when I go to other cities. I don't know if we have, so I'm really interested in that, which means regional connections. I'd like to free up parking spaces that we do have for visitors who want to bring money from outside of Royal Oak to spend it in Royal Oak, which means I'm not parking in one of our parking spaces. I want people to be able to go to the farmer's market on Saturday morning and not have to drive their car. We heard endlessly about people who are gonna not be able to go to the farmer's market if we take away 100 parking spaces. I don't think that's true, but still, it did make it clear that people shop at the farmer's market. Older people shop at the farmer's market, but they have to drive to get there because the senior transit doesn't operate. It doesn't go to the best supermarket we have, no offense to Hollywood and Holiday, but, so I want that, that's very important to me that we have, that we have service to the farmer's market. I would take it every day when I'm not riding my bike. When I talked to the, Federal Transit Administration about this, you know, is this like wacky, is this something you all would support? They said, I think it'd be great if Royal Oak had a circulator system, which is sort of different, but it's kind of like what Eileen is talking about, a circulator system, meaning it picks people up from around Royal Oak and takes them to a central destination. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, so a circulator system is an actual definition of something in the transit universe, so I'm sort of looking at that. But I would encourage people to look at other transit systems, like you were saying, Flint is a great transit system. Ann Arbor has a really good transit system, and Grand Rapids has a great transit system. These are municipal systems that people that live in the city actually use. They're not old and antiquated, they're modern, and people use them all the time. And so, I honestly don't want to see us just be a whole city of Uber users, because I don't think that's the answer. So somehow we have to figure all that out. So I agree with everything everybody says. Dave said the hybrid system, or a system that mixes the two technologies, is really interesting. I gave you that article about OmniLink in Prince William County. It looks like an interesting system. So that's, those are sort of my comments, I guess. Next meeting, I think we need to meet, well, obviously, we're gonna meet after the holidays.
Are they all gonna be on Wednesdays? Because I run into a conflict on third
Well,
Wednesday of the month.
I don't know if we can plan if we can plan a whole, a meeting here would be great. I would love to, plan maybe a work session where we're not here, we're somewhere else, we're more flexible. And I'd like to bring a bus or two. You've never been on a bus? I'd like to look at buses. What is a bus? What does it feel like to be in a bus? What are the amenities in a bus? I think that's important.
Maybe it can come pick you up.
We could pick us up.
Flex route.
In a bus.
I think our next meeting should be like in Pontiac, and we should all take a bus to get there.
We could do that. Dave's not doing that.
I mean, you can get up to the outer edge, just like.
Well, somewhere
I
where
would
we.
say, I would
a
offer you the
destination-
county complex, but unfortunately, that's not a very convenient route.
a
No, I don't know that you
destination
can
where we
get there.
Have to take a bus, would be
Yeah, it's
my
not easy.
point.
Yeah. So, I know everybody probably works during the day, so we probably aren't gonna do that, but, does January 3rd work in anybody's calendar? Or should I just send out a thing? A doodle? Or have somebody do it?
It's good to send that out, I think.
I may be out of town.
Are we looking at you? So I'd like to get Smart to bring a couple of buses, a regular, 30-foot bus and a connector bus, so we can see how that feels. And then,
Can we go to their
Facility?
Yeah,
We
on
could
Maple
meet-
Road,
we could meet at their facility, probably in Troy.
then we'd see multiple
Yeah.
buses. The problem is it open during the evening?
I've had meetings there,
Really?
yeah. I've had meetings everywhere, about transit, wherever I can. We could meet at the transit center here in Royal Oak, too.
What does that mean,
No
the
one's ever been
transit
in
center?
there.
They have buses? What is it?
Well, it was designed to be a Greyhound station back in the day.
Was a great.
It was a Greyhound station.
So somebody would, if
I
we
mean, I
met
took
there,
the Greyhound
someone
to
what
the
that
would
is.
station.
actually be inside the building for.
And then it,
There's no one inside the building.
yeah, now it's just a transit stop
building.
with bathrooms.
Well, something interesting for everyone to know is like, so because the federal dollars were used to build it, so it has to remain a transit system, a transit building. Or you have to pay back all the dollars that went back into it, and no one has those resources.
We have talked about it because the city has talked about, or I have talked about, selling it to a developer. Not, it has to remain a transit station, but a transit-oriented development with a hotel, with retail, with so it's combined with the Amtrak station that's there, that's just like a fancy bus shelter. Whereas Dearborn has a really nice transit center, Troy's got a really nice transit center, we have like a glorified bus stop. And a building that really doesn't serve a purpose. To me, it seems like valuable real estate attached to a parking lot. So I hope it's on our website, it's supposed to be as a development opportunity. So yes, we can see about meeting up at the transit station. It's at 15 and, what did he say, Coolidge, I think, or somewhere in that neighborhood. And I think I need to somehow find somebody who can come and speak to us with more details about this whole flex stuff. I don't know where they'll come from, I don't know where I'll find them, but I just think we need to find out about that.
Right.
And not a salesperson, but like an actual,
Transit person.
transit
Yeah.
person, yeah.
That's in Bolt.
That may be you need to do that remotely. It may not be somebody really handy
Yeah,
to
that's
come
possible
visit
too.
us.
We'll
We
see
may
if they
need-
have that kind of service at the transit center, although I'm sure they do. And then public engagement, we need to start thinking about that. And so, we won't pick dates now, but planning an open house is kind of a big deal, and I know we'll be working with Judy. But does anybody besides me want to help put that together? I don't suppose all of us do, in terms of what we present, how we present it, what the talking points are, all of that kind of thing. So I will work with Judy. If anybody wants to work with me, let me know. And then the same with survey. I'm sure we'll be putting together a survey to send out to the community if anybody wants to help with that. I'm sure sitting down with Judy would be very helpful to put together some
No, I
questions.
would be interested particularly in that, because I guess I'm also interested, I mean, a point that the SMART representatives brought up, this, where are you? I mean, almost gauging, will you use this? Where are you coming from and where you want to go? And
What
figuring
time?
out, I mean, to me, it invites, I use a lot of technology. I don't make technology, I don't develop it. But it seems to me that it lends itself very easy for people. I'm here, and I would go here, and I go here, and this is the frequency, and boom, 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 and be able to track all that so that we can heat map it to be able to, I mean, to demonstrate if people did use it, or people follow through and say that, yeah, they'd use it, it was convenient, safe, reliable, et cetera. How do we capture that, in addition to the open house?
We have GIS technology, so we have somebody that if we did a survey and we asked for their address and then asked where they went to, he can plot all that and do heat maps. We can do that.
I would like to see on that survey though, like, how often do you take Lyft or Uber? I think it'd be pretty interesting to see
Sure. Yeah, and
how
then.
many people don't answer for the bus part, but would say that they use Uber 10 times a month, you
Yeah.
know?
I would bet that's a lot of people, especially younger people. People I know that it would never occur to them to go downtown, have dinner and a couple drinks and drive home, which is a total change from previous generations.
Right.
So, I'm happy that they're not doing that.
Absolutely.
Very happy. So that's good. The heat maps, whatever that is, will be very exciting. Okay, good. Then we'll do that. James, we'll send out a doodle to figure out when our next meeting is. And I will call SMART to see if we can meet there, and then I will try and find somebody who can speak to us with vast knowledge about flexible transit.
I had a question. I haven't heard OCC mentioned. Have you had any reach out to them?
I used to, but that's very important. They've always been on the list of stakeholders.
Yeah,
They got a
they gotta
new,
move a lot of people to classes and,
well, they do, and people come here and move out as quickly as possible. Where's my list? But yes, we need to get somebody from OCC
thanks.
to speak to us.
Presentation tonight, both of them, are they on the website somewhere, on that Facebook you were?
Yes. So on the wall, they
You
will
know,
be.
there was full of
Yes,
information.
they will all be posted on the website, which is, if you just type in Royal Oak Transit Task Force, the link just pops right up. So, public comment, if there's any public that wants to comment, this would be the time to do it. So,
Not all at once.
the gentleman in the fifth row.
You sound like the mayor there. I thought you were going to try to guess the color of my shirt.
I was gonna call you by name, and then I thought, no, I'll just call you the gentleman in the fifth row. Hello, Brandon.
Brandon Colo, 600 East Hudson. I'm really excited for this. I think it's beyond time that Royal Oak had a better form of transportation. I started using public transportation in college, like almost everyone else sit up here, but it's only after my car got impounded 3 times by MSU police that I stopped driving and started using it. But it was awesome because it took me to class, it took me to the mall in Meridian, downtown to baseball games in Lansing, and church in Okemos. Like, I can go anywhere, and I was never bound by hours. It was always running. So I think that's something we could develop here, and you guys have a great task in front of you to make that happen. When looking at it, though, there's a lot of community assets when you look at, right? So we talked a lot about the farmers market, but we have the library up back here, too. And we're about to see, like was pointed out, a lot of construction happen downtown here. So the faster we can get this going, we can start this public transportation system, hopefully, to coincide with the start construction here, so we're not limiting access to some of our great assets right here in downtown, and then on both the north and south end with the senior center and Boys and Girls Club. So I'm excited for that, and as a parent who does not want to stand in those lines one day that line up at the schools to get your kid, I'm really excited to see this happen, and all the buses go to the schools, because just environmentalist to me sees these cars idling, waiting to pick up their kids, and I think that's crazy. So I know with Prop A, the city's really limited what it could do to help a school district, but this is one nice way that we can actually get around that and put funds to helping kids get a better education. So good luck to all of you.
So perhaps you'd like us to be helpful, you'd like to help us put together some public engagement. You know the city pretty well.
Yeah, well, we did that charrette, and I now know what charrette is, up in over the Oaks, which is great. So I've heard it said many times, but I think that's gonna be a great way to get people out to see what everyone wants. What are we going to vote for? And it's gonna cost us money one way or another. So how as citizens are we willing to do that? What amenities will we pay for?
If we say it's a way to get to the splash pad, perhaps we can get a line.
Hell, I'll pay for it myself then.
Out of interest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At the commissioner, public comments, they were talking about not building another park. That looks like all the rest.
Yeah.
And I think we should think of the same thing.
That's right.
Let's
Is there anybody else?
think out of the box.
Thank you. Is there anybody else? If not, we will adjourn this meeting. Is there a motion to adjourn? So moved.
So moved.
Adjourn. Thank you.